July 28th come to order, please. We will stand for a moment of silence and remain standing for a pledge. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Had a chance, please, those that have had that chance to look to the agenda to see if there are any additions or changes that you would note. If not, we have a motion to accept agenda as presented.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir, please.
I'd just like to add an item for discussion, and that is the recent Environmental Rules Regulation Commission approval of multiple new toxins and doubling toxic materials into our waterways as a discussion item.
Looks like that would come under 3. If we split B to 3 to 3A and 3B, is that a way to approach it? That would be 3B. Okay, so 3A then would be emergency business. Are there any other proposed revisions? Do we hear a motion to accept the agenda as revised? It's been moved as second.
Second.
Any opposed to that? That's accepted unanimously. Are you wanting to lead off on this, please, Dwayne? We're on item number 3.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, at our last meeting, we had a discussion that was quite lengthy about the current...
Let me just stop you just for a second.
Okay.
I'm sorry, because I made a mistake.
Actually, I told you what we should do, and you and I both agreed, and we both forgot.
We both
so, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Excuse me. We're going to take some public comment now, and if those of you that wish to make comment, I think we have a form, and if we don't have a form, then you're welcome to hold your hand, but we're going to start off with Pam from Representative Posey's office. And we're just delighted you're here, and we're delighted David's here.
Thank you so much. It truly is our honor and pleasure to be with you. Congressman Posey wishes he could have been here personally, but with his duties was unable. But he did put together a statement for you, and I will leave that with Dwayne and Kathy so that they can put that into the formal minutes. On behalf of Congressman Bill Posey, thank you for coming today and for your continued investment of time and energy into restoring the health of our lagoon. I'm very glad to be here with you, and everybody's commitment to working together to solve this issue is essential to our success. On a federal level, Congressman Posey has continued his efforts to ensure both the immediate and the long-term funding needs of the lagoon restoration projects, making sure that they're met. Recently, he joined with 13 members of the Florida delegation in sending a letter calling on House leadership to bring the Water Resources Development Act, which contains vital funding for Florida water infrastructure projects, up for a vote on the House floor. In addition, he participated in a working group on Capitol Hill that brought together leading officials from each of the federal agencies working to understand and address harmful algae blooms and other hypoxia events. The event focused on breaking down the procedural barriers that disrupt communications and collaboration between federal agencies, and Mr. Posey will continue his efforts to ensure that the red tape and the bureaucracy do not get in the way of our solutions. It's important for us all to remember that the lagoon's problems were not made overnight, and we're not going to fix them overnight, but moving forward, it's vital that we use a steady hand to guide our projects. Our communities in our lagoon deserve a measured approach that relies on set policies, identified targets, and the best available science to ensure we are not just spinning our wheels, but rather making recognizable progress. Adopting a concrete position statement to serve as a starting point in future deliberations could be useful aid to the Council's decision-making and evaluation process. We must avoid the temptation to revert to finger-pointing and name-calling when faced with adversity. Only through the transparent, the accountable, and consensus-driven approach that defines this council can we hope to have a success in bringing the lagoon back to full health. We will need a sustained effort at the local government level, the state, and the federal if we hope to succeed. The Congressman and I and David all thank you for this opportunity to speak with you today. David Jackson will be with you from now on. I will retire officially on August the 5th. It has been truly my joy to be here. I have made a commitment to Commissioner Fielding, to Dwayne, and to Kathy to sit on a committee, your choice, when you're ready. So you've got that in the comments, so I know you're going to be able to hold me to it. I'll let you know how to reach me after next Friday, but I did bring with me today a letter from the Congressman that was just approved by Franking last night, and his comments to the constituents. It's a legislative update on the Indian River Lagoon. I left that in the back. I'll give a copy to Kathy to put into the minutes, and it really gives everything that he's done on the lagoon to this point. And then the other thing that I brought is my retirement party is on August the 3rd at Kegman Incorporated in Melbourne, and I hope that you can join us. I brought those flyers with me and left them in the back too. But let me introduce David Jackson. David, I know that you know him. He's been coming with me for quite a long time as the secondary lead on Indian River Lagoon issues, so he's already up to speed. You don't have to train him. I think that's so important, and it's something else the Congressman always does. We never have just one staffer that understands everything about an issue. We always have two. It's been a real joy. Thank you. If you have any questions, David and I are here to answer them.
It's a delight that you have been with us and helped us, and we have relied upon and will continue to rely upon Congressman as one of our champions.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other comments for Pam? I see no. Thank you, ma'am. Any other public that wish to speak at this time? I see none. Dwayne? Okay. Gary? Go ahead and say your name and your association, Gary.
Good morning, Gary Ritter, Florida Farm Bureau Federation. I just wanted to come up here and say that we highly support this effort that you are going through, and we appreciate you all for expediting the process and taking time out of your busy schedules to come here and get this completed. And I'm going to be real quick here and take a page out of your book and say yes.
All righty. I understand that. Are there any other comments that you'd like to make? Then please, my rude interruption.
I'm glad you remembered.
It was a short...
Yeah, you and I both. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, last meeting we had a long discussion about the emergency declarations at the local level, the emergency declarations at a state level, and you directed staff to come back with letters to be directed to the governor and also the President of the United States. And in that discussion, there was a lot of discussion about detail, backup, specific projects. And so in response to your direction to staff, I sent you an email with a draft letter and letters and support documents. And when I sent it out, I was looking at it, and it was long, it was detailed, it was very repetitive of a lot of information that was already out, in SERP, in SEP, in the Indian River Lagoon information. And then I followed up with a second option. And that second option was to look directly at the question at hand, which at the time was supporting the governor's request for a federal state of emergency. Well, since that time, that request was made, has been declined at the federal level. If you're looking at the news around the country, we've got multiple algal and cyanobacterial blooms in a number of states now. And so last week, I thought in order to assist you in your deliberations today, I sent out a 2-page draft position statement. And that is more generalized, but I was thinking that it might meet your intent. And so we are here today to address, how you want to move forward, what process you want to move forward to, and also kind of the structure. So I've kind of instructed Kathy that she's in the hot seat today because I fully anticipate that you will craft some statement of position that you may or may not want to use in a letter, but it could be used in a general context. But I do want to make one suggestion from the staff side, and also thinking about the NEP as the organization we are now as of last meeting, with a standing Science Advisory Committee, Citizens Advisory Committee Management Board. I just want you to consider that whatever we deliver as a product today, that possibly that should go through review. We believe staff could do that in a quick turnaround, relatively quick. We have a management board meeting August 11th. We can use our website on this to get public information and then come back to you in the September framework, if that's your desire, with a fully vetted document through the management conference. And so that's where we stand today, and we're ready to serve you as staff as you make decisions as to how you want to move forward.
Let's make sure that board understands what's being suggested at the moment. Is there is a, and I won't call it a starter because you've done extremely well, but there is a 2-page document that we're talking about.
Yes.
And so what we're talking about doing is you may or may not have had opportunity to look through that. But we plan to go through that and discuss the various items and make modifications or suggestions. And then based upon whatever we pull together, then it will go to both management, technical and management for their review. And citizens, I guess there'll be some interaction with citizens.
Yes.
Committee. So that'll come back to that. And then it'll come back for us then to solidify. Is that pretty much what?
That's staff recommendation, and the time frame would be that we would fast track the Citizen Advisory Committee meetings to try to get the final draft back to you for final decision in that September board framework.
Now, is this something that's been available for public? Does public
It
have
has
access
not,
to
and in
this?
fact, Kathy's ready to kind of put this up on the screen so you can kind of move through it, sentence by
Is Richard
sentence
here?
if need be. And I think the detail is important.
Let me see if we can, I'm not trying to embarrass Richard at the moment, but it might. Do you think we could get some copies of this for folks here? Would that be okay?
Yeah, we
I believe
run
we
and
can
get
do that,
copies.
sure.
Okay, let's do that. You don't have one either?
Help is on the way.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
you laid out a very comprehensive approach. And when this was brought forward, it was thought to be an effort to secure and to support the governor's approach to a state of emergency. Is this not now just a moot point for us to take any action at all? Because if we're going to wait until September, it's not exactly an emergency. And the fact is that the governor did not achieve the request from the federal government for a state of emergency. I think the only thing that we could do is change the focus of this to encourage the governor to resubmit a letter, a declaration, and make it simple as that, one paragraph, because the amount of time that we're going to spend taking this back to committees, to the science side, it then becomes really an issue of just supporting what our programming is. So I think this exercise is moot in that, and I appreciate the effort you've gone through, Dr. DeFries and staff, but at this stage, it's been rejected from the federal government. And the only thing that would change that is a resubmittal or an appeal. So for us to try and foster or cobble together a letter requesting a declaration of emergency and waiting till September is truly, I believe, a moot point. So I just want to raise that to your attention. I mean, we could sit here and go through this for some time, but I think it's irrelevant at this stage because we're not really going to get a state of emergency address.
My understanding of what we're hoping to accomplish is not a state of emergency request. We received that, we stated that, and we, county, and it's somewhat dissipating to some degree. I mean, we still have a lot of problems, and I'm not trying to minimize those existing problems, but it is dissipating to some degree. No, what we're trying to accomplish at this moment is to see we have an overall boiling state of emergency in the entire lagoon. It's just a matter of some of it's sort of under the surface, but there it is, and so it pops up there, and it's popping up in the north end and popping up different pops up different places, and so this, which is the this is a little two-page thing. What we're looking at doing there is coming to a more precise statement of our overall, not just this particular event, Chris, as you've suggested, this particular event, time-wise, it might have sort of run its course. Not that it's not still doing a lot of damage to us, but as far as gaining the attention of the governor and of the president, it might have run its course there. But what we're talking about doing today is looking at formulating the concepts, the underlying concepts that we then want to be extract, so that when we have other occasions that we have a ready-made, agreed upon terminology. Am I off base?
No, that's correct. That having a strong position on record as not just the council, but also the National Estuary Program, I think is going to be useful. But Commissioner, there is a time-sensitive component to this, and that is the WRDA reauthorization and appropriation. And so we know that because of this election year cycle and the timeline and the fact that we are in a fairly long congressional recess, that at least in my mind, and I'm not an expert in this by any means, but it seems to me that reauthorization of WRDA, before we do this leadership transition in Washington, might be a very important time-sensitive issue for your consideration. It's hard to know when appropriations will actually happen, but that reauthorization is important.
And this water bill, as Pam mentioned, it's an essence of the immediacy. Without that authorization and without that allocation, the funding, then the monies don't come to help the estuaries. We don't have any, so that's essential, and that's what we're trying to prepare for now. So, please.
No, I agree. I think that I think you're right in terms of the request for emergency action, and that exchange has already played itself out. So I think given the resources assembled right now, it's incumbent on us to focus on this position paper, because I agree, Commissioner, I think it is helpful with the urgency of WRDA, and so I think we take advantage of the time right now to put it down so that we can get the process going right now, and again take advantage of the resources assembled.
Thank you, sir. Other, yes, sir.
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you. I think it is imperative that we get this position paper out as soon as possible, because one of the points that Senator Rubio made at the meeting that he chaired last week was the importance of getting WRDA passed when the Congress reconvenes after their layoff. All of the projects, the SEP projects and Central Everglades, are in that project. The authorization for those, if we don't get that done, there won't be any money coming to fund those things. So I think the position paper is really important. I really like the second draft that Dr. DeFries came up with as far as the emergency letter goes, and I think that if we could somehow recraft this so that it doesn't piggyback on the emergency thing, but emphasizes the fact that we've got to get some control of the Army Corps of Engineers and their outflow of this poisonous water that is polluting our lagoons. I think now is the time to really strike, and I like the second draft. I think that maybe could be reworked and put it out to all the folks that are running for re-election. Just my thoughts.
Thank you, sir. And you're referring to the one that's addressed through Garcia, the regional administrator?
Yes, the draft that goes
Garcia.
to Garcia Sheck, if that's the proper pronunciation, through FEMA.
Okay, well, we can look at, I think that's certainly something that we can look at as well, but at the moment, I believe, did you have something you'd like to, please?
Well, I mean, it was a little different on the process side.
Please.
Since we're the council, right? So we kind of oversee the NEP. I would suggest that at the end, I do very much want to get this done today, with council feedback and get a good product out by the council. I would almost suggest that we consider it a final subject to change so that we can immediately use it since the council has drafted it, so that, Dwayne and whoever can use it. We run it through the CAC and whoever needs to so we can get some feedback and make necessary changes on that, but I don't want to delay using it after today. I think that might be, since we're the council, we can
Excellent point.
stand behind it.
Other comments to that point? Doug?
My point is a little bit more general. The thing that I like about it is a fairly detailed position statement by this council as to what needs to be done. And instead of finding ourselves when we're in a fire drill, trying to meet to give our staff permission to send out a letter to support getting funds for the Indian River Lagoon, if our position is carefully crafted and already on record, they can send it. They can send it on a timely basis. We don't have to wait to be turned down and hold a meeting after it's too late. Let's get ahead of the game instead of always playing catch up. Let's just do it.
I think there's concurrence on that. Are there other comments on that? Yes, sir. Yeah.
Sorry. That it's important that we have something today that works, but something that's it's a living document. I like that idea. This lagoon, we're going to have issues from time to time that flare up. I feel like we're riding the Titanic. It's going to take a while to keep this ship afloat and turn it around and right it. We're not going to do it in a year or 2 years. It's going to take a long ride to make this lagoon what it can be. And I think having the right document that sends the right message is so important. And I think Drew's right. It's like going to be a living, breathing document that we all can use. I can use for my office. The chairman can. All the people that support Lagoon can use. So I think that's a valuable way to go.
Are there other comments on this basic concept of what we're approaching doing? Staff?
I think I agree with all the statements, and I do think a final draft subject to change allows us to begin to move quickly. And so if you should get to that position, and I hope you do today, from the staff side, I think our first next step would be to make sure that our entire Florida delegation knows that word is incredibly important to move forward in reauthorization. We don't need to do that by letter. We can reach out through our normal channels by phone, email, and just let them know that you have a position statement. The word of reauthorization and appropriation is something we need to see.
Is there, Chris, do you have a comment you want to
No,
make?
I was just trying to get his attention to put his microphone on.
Oh, your
Yep,
microphone.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, yes, sir.
And I was even suggesting not have final draft on it, just have it be a final document subject
Okay.
to change. because once you stick draft on
Well
something,
taken.
that's the.
Well taken, well taken. Okay, two concepts that we're dealing with. Let's just make sure this is okay at the very first. WARDA is essential. That's essential. Does anybody have any other comments to make about that other than the reinforcement that we want to give staff our strong go-ahead? Let's do what we need to do to push to accomplish that. Is that where we want to go? Is there a motion to that effect? So moved. Is second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any opposition to that, allowing staff to go full steam on soliciting, encouraging, drawing out the support for WARDA? I hear no opposition. That's yes, ma'am, sorry. Do we need public on this? Is there any public comment that wishes to address that question? Any public? Yes, ma'am. Please. Your name and your association, please, ma'am.
I'm Kathleen Albee, and I come from Hope Sound, Florida. I think all of your comments are perfect. I appreciate that you're paying attention to the wording. We are in a state of emergency, and we need to act now in all of the ways that we can for future to get this thing done right now. So yes, awesome.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there any other public? I see none. There was no. Is there any opposition? Anyone wish to vote no? I see none. That's accepted unanimously. Please take that as your operating acceptance.
Thank you.
All right, let's go down through. I think to be effective, I believe we're going to need to sort of move through this in a fairly, we might even have to read it.
I think a line-to-line read on this would be appropriate, because there's two lines that I'm going to recommend that I threw in that I am going to request that we strike, and I'll tell you why when we get to those lines.
That wasn't a joke. I didn't intend it that way anyhow. You're going to be our official reader?
I suppose I could do that, sure. Let's see.
On this first introductory paragraph, which is a fairly all-encompassing kind of statement of basic information, is there any, do you see, I'll give you a second, those to refresh your memory on that.
Thanks, Kathy. That helped me out a lot.
I think it might be going more. Let's see.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
So I've read this already and know where my suggestions are.
Okay.
I don't know if everyone's in the same boat,
Right.
but are we just looking at the first paragraph now?
Yes.
Okay, I don't have any suggestions on that.
I don't have any either. I think the first paragraph's good.
Everybody good with first? Everybody's good, okay. Time for leadership and action is now. That certainly is seems obvious assertion.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, please.
Just a point of information on that. This language that I used, the remove, reduce, restore, rebuild, respond, that actually originated in discussions in Brevard County with their Save the Lagoon program. So we have been actually, not just we, but almost the entire community has kind of gravitated to that clear description of action, and it is resonating with the community because it's clear and understandable about those different. So that's the reason you see those multiple R's. And so we're trying to standardize language throughout the 5 counties as we look to actions to restore.
I think that has utility, yes. Yes, sir, please.
Mr. Chairman, I just have one suggestion, and it's a very minor thing, and it sounds like nitpicking almost, but we got the time for leadership and action, but, you know, if it was time for leadership and the comprehensive restoration of the Indian River Lagoon, instead of just action, say what it is we want. Say it emphatically.
That's a useful observation. Others comment to that point? Is that acceptable? Is that acceptable? I see consensus.
Would you mind saying that again?
It's time for leadership for a comprehensive restoration of the Indian River, or the time for leadership on a comprehensive restoration of the Indian River Lagoon is now. Leave in the is now. Let's keep in the need to do it now, but let's say what action is. What it is we actually want.
Kathy, you have some flexibility there. I mean, you've got
And,
the
you know,
basic
reword it. You know, clean it up, please. Thank
Okay, sure.
All right, we're down, remove the accumulation, there's, yes, sir, please.
So the other edit in that one paragraph I would suggest is striking the word non-regulatory, only because the lead-in talks about our individual efforts, and I think each of us has the ability to have regulatory efforts as an individual, even though the council does not. So I would just suggest striking that.
Okay. I certainly don't want to limit our possibilities. Thank you, sir. Any comment to that point? Without comment, we're going to go ahead and accept these things now. I want you to understand where we are. Okay, thank you, sir. Now we're down into the remove paragraph. Please.
Question to the staff, Dwayne, would it fit your thinking to put the word dispersed before water storage? I keep forgetting, sorry. Put the word dispersed before the word water storage.
That's the last sentence of that. And the distinction being made would that have any restrictive activities?
Right.
Well, let me make a suggestion there, providing adequate water storage, including dispersed water storage options, treatments, and conveyances, and all treatments and conveyances. Let me think about that, because what we don't want to do is to limit those options,
Right, I agree.
including water storage. So providing adequate water storage, comma.
I mean, Mr. Chair, in my mind, water storage encompasses dispersed, SERP, everything just as it's on its own.
Okay. You might be right about that.
Yeah.
Okay.
You okay?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
You're good, okay.
I agree.
Okay.
I have a suggestion in this paragraph
Please.
too. So the phrase, high volume freshwater discharges from Lake Okeechobee and the St. Lucie River, that's not the only high volume freshwater discharges we are challenged with
Right.
in the lagoon.
Right.
So I would almost suggest, while those are a problem, I'm not denying that at all, but it's a part of the CNSF, the Central and Southern Florida Storage, and Conveyance System, which includes C-23, C-24,
Right.
and C-25, which has that same problem. So I would almost suggest rephrasing that to say, end seasonal high-volume freshwater discharges from the CNSF and other water control districts is the only thing I could come up with, because north of, St. Lucie Estuary, there's other high-volume
Right.
freshwater discharges
Absolutely.
from large canal systems.
Absolutely.
Right.
So just looking lagoon-wide, I think it's a bit more comprehensive.
It is.
That's a great point.
It is. That was a good, that was.
Yes.
Are there comments to that point?
Yeah, just to comment on that, just the C-25 alone, on average, discharges 125 million gallons a day, every day of the year to the lagoon, just that one weir structure. Yep.
Okay, that was a good
Good
point.
point. That's a great point.
Are there other comments to that point?
Mr.
Yes,
Chairman?
sir, please.
I'm not sure where it should be in remove or reduce or both, in that although it talks about fertilizers and nutrients, but it doesn't talk about toxins. And that's why I asked to bring up the recent change in the following item coming forward.
We're not on that one yet.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is I don't know if it should be in remove, because if we have toxins in the water, are we going to remove toxins? Well, that's certainly about lagoon health. So I don't know if you want to put it in remove or reduce, because toxins are certainly an issue. So, but we're not using the term toxins, and if you look in our CCMP, page 12, it talks about reducing or eliminate industrial discharges to the Indian River Lagoon. And it's a high-ranking issue. So that language is you know, what's been approved recently is in stark contrast to what we're trying to accomplish. So I'm raising it to you for consideration using the term toxins.
And I think your point is well taken, and I'm not, you know, I'm sort of a maverick, and because you know that. But I mean, in the sense that my objective, not next week, not tomorrow night, but my objective, and it sounds like Pollyanna, my objective is to eliminate any of these contaminant pollutants that go into our waterway. That's my objective. Now, there are interim steps, and I'm hesitant that we put my objective here because that will be seen maybe as being so unrealistic that people discount the whole effort. But I'm telling you right off, that's my objective. That's what I work on every day.
I don't think it's Pollyanna if you say the ultimate goal is.
Okay, that's good. You've saved me. Okay, that was good. Could we say it in that way and not so that various organizations would not be offended that we are being hypercritical? That the ultimate goal, the ultimate, you're our wordsmith, Doug. Would that be that, Doug?
I think you, at this point, should leave it general. I really do think you should. That what we want to do is we want to craft a general statement that is specific enough about what we want to see as an end result. And we don't want to put anything in here that points an accusatory finger too early at this stage. There will be time for that later on. And hopefully there will be funding to cure the problem that goes along with the accusatory finger.
Okay, that's a useful point.
Mr. Chairman, could I make a suggestion?
Okay, all right, because we're hanging with two different concepts here we haven't ironed out to include yet.
On
Yes, sir,
that
please.
reduce, we could say reduce to the fullest extent possible freshwater pollutant, add toxicants and nutrient inputs to the lagoon. And I think that would address not just the reality that many of these can't be, you know, the footprint of humans, to reduce it completely is a technology point that we're not at yet and maybe very long from, but reducing the fullest extent possible is a directionary goal.
Okay.
Good point.
Is that an acceptable approach?
It's an
Drew, how do you see that?
You know, there's nothing wrong with that. The only thing that, I don't know where to start, but I do need to address the rule that was approved by the Environmental Regulation Commission, because there's a lot of, I understand that maybe in St. Lucie County the media covers everything with great acumen and accuracy so that you can understand it, but what we had to do under the Clean Water Act is update our toxic criteria to control toxins, not to allow toxins, but to control toxins. We are 2 decades behind schedule, and in those 2 decades where the department hasn't updated, there have been 39 toxic chemicals that have gone unregulated. And so we had to get those on the books. That is missed. And so when we talk about doubling the numbers of chemicals regulated, it gets misinterpreted to doubling the number of chemicals we're allowing. And that's simply not happening. So a lot of these chemicals are getting many times more stringent. Some of them, when EPA published their guidance last summer, said they're not as toxic as we once thought. So we had to address it based on science. We had to get this before the Regulatory Commission because we are completely delinquent on controlling the additional toxins we need to control in our state.
We will
And
probably
so,
get
I
into
understand.
this
So
a little bit
the
more
reason,
in 3B.
you know, the reason it's a distracting item for us in the
Yeah.
Indian River Lagoon is because the toxins we're experiencing in the Indian River Lagoon are a result of nutrient impairment. And so as we are trying to address our impairment here, we need to control the nutrients in the freshwater discharges because that produces the algal blooms, which then produce toxins out of those algal blooms. And so you know, we can say toxins, there's nothing wrong with that. I just don't want it to distract us from the real problem we're facing, which is nutrient impairment.
The massive problem that we are more fully aware of is the nitrogen and the phosphorus. That's the massive problem. There's and I think you're addressing that. There are underlying problems, but I don't want to lose what the point that I allowed us to divert from was freshwater discharges. We came up with a good response to that, and I think that was something you wanted to make a motion.
I actually really liked Doug's comment about not interpreting storage as necessarily disbursement. I don't necessarily put disbursement in with storage when I think of it, so I don't want that to be misused or you know, confusing to someone else who would be reading it that isn't from here and knows what we're talking about when it goes to who it needs to go to, when they deliberate on it and they read it and they see storage is one thing. Disbursement and how we're dispersing it and the areas that we're dispersing the water is I feel a separate issue, a separate point to make on there.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. The freshwater discharges, we had discussed that point. I don't want to lose because we had come to a resolution, I think, on that, and we didn't, I think we had anyhow. Freshwater discharges, it was mentioned, the 23, 24, and 25 are significant sources of discharge, and we want those to be recognized as well, not just the lake, but we want these other sources recognized as well, and I think that was the point that was being pursued. Yes, sir, you had a comment to that?
No.
No.
I'm back on the editing. Is that what we're doing now?
Well, what we were editing, but the comment that we were editing was freshwater, the second to the next to the last line, freshwater discharges from Lake Okeechobee. And we were elaborating on that to say it was also the discharges from these sea canals as well. And not just as, and you mentioned as well from some of these water control districts, these 238s.
Right.
Mr. Chair.
My concern is that we try and be all-inclusive, but we're not, because we're not going to list every single water source. How about if we said something like freshwater discharges from freshwater sources like Lake Okeechobee and the St. Lucie River? I think that would still be inclusive of all freshwater discharges without enumerating every single one and us sitting here and debating for the next 2 hours which ones we should consider and which ones we should leave out.
Thank you, sir. I don't think that would be a task that we would undertake either. But it might, the concept, I think, that was presented, it might be useful for us to make reference to these sea canals, as Doug even mentioned himself, that they do have a significant volume, and as you have indicated, some generic association would be useful, but I believe we want to recognize Okeechobee is a devastating force, but these other sea canals, 23, 24, and 25, are also significant contributors, as well as some of these water districts, these 238 districts. They are 238s, I think.
And limit the wordage. You could say freshwater discharges from freshwater sources like Lake Okeechobee, the freshwater canals, et cetera, something like that.
Okay.
I'm just concerned
Anybody
about
have some
getting
words?
too-
Doug, you have some words you want to put there?
You know, I prefer a little bit, a way to make it a little bit stronger and say that we oppose the devastating discharges from Lake Okeechobee and other significant discharges from other sources. Is that okay?
How's that go? It's not as specific to the point. Yes, sir.
So it's, we're advocating for an outcome, right? And a lot of what's important to advocate for is SERP, like Comprehensive Everglades Restoration.
Yes.
And the stormwater feasibility study that we're doing, that we're going to come out with, that's going to look at these large discharges. And that's where it's going to come from. So if our statement says we got to address these issues,
Yes.
CNSF and the large discharges from Water Control District, that's more targeted.
Yes.
So I think it's clear that, about what we're advocating for. Funding for what's going to come out of our feasibility study and funding for SERP.
Do we?
That's my thought.
I think that's
I think that nothing's wrong with all these statements, but that's just sort of where
I think that's well taken. Other observations? Yes, sir. Please.
The discharges to the lagoon come from two sources, Lake Okeechobee and our own local discharges right here. And you can craft wording to say discharges from Lake Okeechobee and all major regional discharges.
Basin discharges.
Yeah, some wording.
But what I think, here's what I understand from Drew. We are making specific effort. It's in the IRL South part of SERP. It's already been approved. And we're making specific effort to get monies for those reservoirs, STAs, for those fixes. And I understand Drew to say it would be very supportive of that effort to get funding if one of our major missions addresses that concern. That's where I understand, is that a fair statement? That's where I understand that Drew is coming from for those points of specificity. Do we have others, Chris?
I think what I'm taking from Drew's statement is directing the implementation of SERP and SEP in addition to other freshwater discharge or stormwater discharges into the system. So actually stating SERP and SEP as implementation thereof, because they're very specific. They have their own attachment to them because the documentation is already done. The science has already been done. So just from that standpoint, you're indicating a clear definition of what, through the reduction process, you want to do. And then you just add in the other side of that for other stormwater input into the lagoon.
Drew, how do you pull that together?
So I think the commissioner's correct that that's what we need to advocate for, and I see that as on the back page where we can get to that specific ask with increased accelerated and recurring funding is urgently needed to do what the commissioner's talking about.
Right.
But there's much more beyond that to do.
Right.
So by just addressing SERP generally, or whatever, there's a lot more that needs to be done going forward. So.
Okay, we need to sort of coalesce stuff here because we'll never get through the first page even. All right. Who's our wordsmith?
I just went to I want to suggest.
Who's our wordsmith?
We're back on the reduce, I suggest. Is that where we're at? Or are we in
Reduce?
Reduce. So here's my suggestion on reduce in response to both Drew and Commissioner Zadowski's comments. So it would reduce to the fullest extent possible freshwater pollutant. I had suggested toxic, but Drew made a good point that the toxins that we're dealing with are actually byproducts of the algal bloom. So reading through, and nutrient inputs to the lagoon and its tributaries from all sources with focused efforts on reducing water quality impacts, fertilizer, wastewater treatment facilities, septic systems, and stormwater conveyance. And then I was thinking that what we could do is say, and other impacts that contribute to harmful algal blooms. because the harmful algal bloom definition gives us broad application to those blooms that have devastating impacts. So right now it's microcystis and microcystins down south, but it could be dinoflagellates in the future. And we know that they're drivers, some we don't fully understand. So I think those contributors to harmful algal blooms, that gives us some room down the line to identify some of those other issues. Might be micronutrients, might be other pollutants. So that's my suggestion, that we take out toxicants, because that would be covered in the source side under pollutants, and have other impacts that contribute to harmful algal blooms.
Is there comment to staff's suggestion, please? Is that an acceptable suggestion, please?
The only thing I don't think we need the phrase "to the fullest extent possible." I think that waters it down. He's on the reduce paragraph, and we were talking about the remove paragraph, but just to close out the reduce paragraph, I don't know if we need that, because reduce, I'm fine with it.
I agree, I think that's what we're doing. That's the whole premise of what we're doing. We're looking to reduce or eliminate, so I think it's redundant to put it at the end.
I go for short and sweet.
Any other comments to the suggestion that was made?
Fine with it.
Okay, so we're trimming that suggestion a little bit. Are we okay? Are we okay? Somebody, any other?
Now, what have we trimmed it to?
Here you want to be very specific now.
Is it back to where it was?
It's on your screens.
Oh, okay.
HABs, and we're probably will say harmful algal blooms there.
We'll spell that out.
Let's, and if you want to make a stand up and say your name and your association, please.
Eric Bergian.
But you need to do it here in the mic, please.
My voice is pretty
Please,
loud, yeah, just to expound on, and just to note what Dr. DeFries had just commented on. I was thinking eliminate, but it's an impossibility to eliminate. So to reduce to the fullest extent possible, is, I think, the perfect way to phrase that. That's my opinion, and it was his as well, and I think it should stay that way. That's my opinion.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Please.
If I may. I think the language, I like shorter is better, and I think basically we're going to reduce it to the fullest extent possible technically now, and that could change later as other science comes on board. So obviously I think that's unsaid. We're going to reduce it to the fullest extent possible. I don't think needs to be said, because of course we're going to reduce it to the fullest extent possible. Why would we not? Yeah.
Okay, is that interpretation acceptable to board? Is further comment? I see none. We'll move forward with that acceptance. Yes, sir. We're down to the restore water quality and the mosaic of essential biological habitat and species. Are there comments to that point, please? Yes, sir.
I was thinking that maybe we would look at some terminology to talk about the natural biological habitats, or the historical, not the historical, that's the wrong word, but I'm just thinking of a better word there. Just
Doug, may I make a suggestion? Diversity?
Yeah.
The diversity of habitats?
Yeah.
Are there any other comments to that particular suggestion? And it's the Just
Mr.
that
Chairman,
little- Yes, sir,
I
please.
know that it would all fall under it, but the marine fisheries is a part of that, so I think that is encompassing. So when somebody's looking for intent of language, the intent of the language, to make sure that, although I can see it's in there, the diversity of biological habitats, which would include the fish life,
Yeah,
you know, so.
Good, you're good?
yeah.
You're good?
I like it.
Everybody good?
I like it.
So are you suggesting they got the of essential?
Here you-
It would be diversity of essential biological habitats and species.
Yeah, I like it.
Okay, we good? We're going to move? We're going to go to rebuild? Go ahead.
This is really nitpicking probably, but again, I'm with the
ahead.
folks that are looking for fewer words or better. I think you can eliminate of essential and just say, and the diversity of biological habitats. I don't think it's, I think essential is redundant.
I would agree.
Okay. Or-
I'm fine with that. There's no scientific worry there.
yeah. We're not throwing darts.
That's right.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Katie, I'm from Hope Sound. I would like to change that essential precursor to successful IRL. I would like to change restoration to existence or survival. Just that word.
Where is she?
It's the last line on restore. Successful IRL restoration. And the suggestion was
Survival.
Survival.
Or existence. We are restoring it, but for the purpose of its continued existence and survival.
Do we catch the nuance that's being proposed?
No, it's the emergency.
As I would understand the nuance that's being proposed is that what our efforts are to revive, and this nuance is suggesting what we want to do is move things into a sustainable position. Is that true? Is that what you're suggesting? There's a little tweak there, and I don't know. Yes, sir.
Well, actually, used a term that may work. That essential precursor to successful restoration, that is very much, that is a necessary statement. But you could say restoration, either and revival and stewardship. And so, you know, if we don't take these steps towards restoration, you're not going to have a viable system at multiple levels. So your comment about revival, I think, is a strong statement, and I think it does fulfill your intent.
Very good. We have other, yes, sir, please.
Just, I'm just looking at the last line after that, just in Martin and St. Lucie. The 156 miles is impaired as a whole. So if this is a document,
But this specifically referred to Everglades. So we wanted to make a statement, and actually this is a historic statement, that at no time in my memory has the Indian River Lagoon National Estuary Program actually reached kind of all the way south and then west to say we are linked, that Everglades restoration and the Indian River Lagoon, that is a connected kind of mega ecosystem. And so that last sentence is specific to Everglades restoration being a precursor to restoring the southern IRL.
And that is how we're tied. Candidly, my naive hope, again, is that we will tie the entire lagoon into that restoration. That's my hope, because there's various reasons for that. Money's one of the big reasons for that, but that's my hope, is that we will eventually tie that whole thing in, because we don't have a wall or a barrier there at St. Lucie County, and so it might not be an immediate thing, but it is an interactive thing. That's my hope.
Here's
Please.
an additional statement that gets us there. So it would be precursor to successful IRL restoration and revival in Martin and St. Lucie counties and for the entire IRL.
Any opposition to that modification? Do I hear any opposition to that? It is, she's not put it on the screen yet, but be watching your screen, because Kathy's making those modifications. Is there any opposition to that modification? I see none.
Mr.
Yes,
Chair.
sir, please.
So, I don't know if we need to say and the entire IRL, because SERP really is the southern IRL.
IRL South is
Yeah.
up to the 25.
Because there was a lot of confusion between the fish kill that happened in Banana River and Lake Okeechobee discharges, and I don't want to feed that confusion, you know.
Very good point.
That's a good point. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, very good.
Okay,
While I have the mic.
we will concede that battle. Okay, let's concede that battle at the moment, but I've already said what I want us to achieve eventually, but we'll concede that battle. at the
Can I add the word,
Good.
in implementation of Everglades restoration, that's fine, can I add the word comprehensive before Everglades? Because I don't want to.
Okay, comprehensive,
Is that capital?
yeah,
Yes, it is.
good. Any other comments on restore? Are we good? Let's move then rebuild.
I've got a
Yes, sir, please.
suggestion. I noticed that we skipped a 5. There's a 1, 2, 3, 4, and no 5. However, I don't know what the 6 is, and so I don't know if we need the 6 because this whole thing is the vision, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't just not sure. I'm not
I
sure
agree.
what that is.
Again, I'm looking to reduce the wording on this because you get too much wording and people stop, their eyes glaze over.
Comprehensive Everglades restoration.
Okay, there were 2 points that were made. One is a question about the essence of number 6, vision of a preferred future for the IRL. That's what I think we're pushing to accomplish.
I'm just suggesting that in this context, I don't think that number 6 is necessary in this rebuild.
Okay, so the suggestion was that we strike 6.
I agree.
Not that that's not an element of what we're trying to do, but that's the point. That is what we're trying to do.
Which I think we've demonstrated with all of this wordage.
Okay. So that's the suggestion. We're going to strike 6. Some comment on that? Any comment on that? Any public comment? I don't see anybody yet. Okay. There is no 5. So if you strike 6, we've got 4. I see no comments, so we're going to accept that and move forward to respond.
I personally like this one because it's succinct and it's to the point.
He'll carry the flag on this one, that's succinctness. Other comments on respond? Monitoring, it does seem monitoring is going to play an enormous role in allowing us to make progress. And we will need to be cognizant of the essential role that monitoring is going to play. It's not a waste of time and money and a toy. It's essential that we be able to get this on-flowing data so that we can better understand the interaction of all of these impositions of things that are happening to us. So anybody, are we good? Responds good? Kurt said this is good. Are we good? Good. All right, accept, respond. We're all responsible for the stewardship of the IRL and the health of Florida's surface and groundwaters, and we recognize that these waters are connected both physically and functionally. A statewide commitment to clean water is urgently needed. The watershed decisions we make today will determine the environmental and economic future of the IRL and Florida. Now this was the point that you were suggesting, Dwayne, that we delete.
If I could jump in.
Okay, please.
Even with the serious nature of this discussion, I have to tell you a story. These next 2 sentences were driven literally by a over-the-beer conversation with a very bright dear friend of mine who spent 2 hours trying to tell me that all of the problems of the lagoon were due to manatees. And so I suggest that And actually, this language comes straight out of the Western Water Wars on the radical center. So I suggest that we go ahead and strike both "we reject" sentences, but it really did feel good to me to write them down and send them to you, because it's this finger pointing and accusatory tone that we're all living with now. I kind of had hit the limit after the second beer.
All right, in light of that revelation,
I kind of like that in there. I really do, because everybody you talk to has another theory about what the problem is, and it depends on where they are, where they live and what part of the lagoon they're in, and people point the finger at Lake Okeechobee and say it's all Lake Okeechobee's fault, and the science says that water isn't getting any further than north than Fort Pierce. So I like it.
They are true statements, but think about what we're doing here and what you're doing here. We're crafting a position statement that, in my personal opinion and professionally, needs to be bold, visionary, and positive. And those two statements really aren't positive. They did feel really good to type them in.
I agree. I don't think they get us where we need to go.
all right?
I agree.
And manatees might not be that causal as we would anticipate. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, please.
One suggestion, and again, this is minor, but, we talk about how we're all responsible for this. What about even more positive, which is unusual for a lawyer, and we say something like we're all part of the solution. In other words,
That's great.
instead of blaming ourselves, this needs to be somewhat of a call to arms, like that we can do this kind of thing, and then move on from there.
That's fantastic. Yes, ma'am, your name and your association, please.
Lisa Krimsky, University of Florida, IFAS Extension.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to second that and follow upon that theme of inclusivity, and perhaps shift gears in terms of saying we are all responsible, and perhaps adding that last paragraph where it talks about full participation of individuals in terms of restoration, and perhaps adding it's time to become Indian River Lagoon friendly as a positive for that last paragraph there, and involving the citizenry as an inclusivity to not only the blame, but also the solution. Thank you.
Could I offer
Please,
one
Kurt.
suggestion
Please, Kurt.
for the final sentence? The solution to restoring the Indian River Lagoon rests with all of us.
Yeah, everybody who puts their toothbrush up at night that lives here. It's everybody.
Now, Doug Daniels, are we agreeing with his introduction to the point?
I think so, that, we are indeed all responsible. And if we were to include all, if we were to list all, it would be the state, federal government, local government, everything. I don't think we need to do that.
Right.
I think the we kind of takes care of it.
Yes. And we are the source of solution.
We are the source of solution. All of us.
Yes.
State, federal,
Okay.
local.
Okay, so that's an acceptable so far? That's an acceptable introduction? And then the young lady's point, the point that she made. Kathy, did you get any of that?
You'll have to correct me.
Please.
I'm trying to capture Mr. Daniels' point, and then what comes after that? We are the source of the solution. And then we're going to strike.
So this begins at "we are all responsible," and then "we are the source of the solution," and this would be struck.
We're going to strike
The
that.
fault
Okay.
thing.
Oops, what did I do?
It's up at the first part of it, Kathy, the introduction.
Strike right here.
Yeah, got it. We're good.
It needs to be of a or of the, because it just
Yeah.
sort of...
Let me ask Doug, you're watching it on the screen, please?
Let me take
I'm
a
sorry.
look here.
Sorry, Ken.
Sir? Good? we are all responsible, and I think you were modifying that to a positive statement, is that we are all,
I would say instead of we are all responsible, we're all part of the solution. That
now, that does switch it, but it switches in a positive way. Is that an acceptable approach so that everyone feels that we buy in with that approach, with that statement?
Let me make a suggestion. In order to be part of the solution, we have to recognize we're part of the problem. And so if you wanted to bring those statements into the same level of urgency, that paragraph could start as we are all responsible in full caps, and then Kathy, go down to the bottom where you say we are the source of the solution. Just go ahead and take that out and just, we are the solution. So we are the solution in caps. So you could start it in caps, end it in caps, and you've kind of bookmarked that entire paragraph on, kind of we own this problem and we need to solve the problem.
We good with that? Yes, ma'am, you had a comment?
I was going to say, you could word it as we are all responsible for implementing the solutions. Maybe to shorten it, but that sounds good.
Thank you, ma'am. We're good? Everybody see? Everybody see?
We're all responsible, and you could even, if you didn't even read the rest of it, you would read that we are the solution. We are responsible, we are.
Are we good? You good?
I'm good with that statement. I have another edit.
On this portion of it?
Yep.
Okay, please.
So I think it's time to be a little selfish here. So I would suggest instead of a statewide commitment, is we say a lagoon-wide commitment. The reason I say that is because we're advocating for the lagoon, and there's a lot of people advocating for a lot of things across the state right now. So as DEP, I would like statewide, but as a council member for the lagoon, I think our message should be just focused on the lagoon.
Okay, now, Dwayne, okay, you're good with that. Anybody, you see, and anybody have difference with that? And it is I don't see it as a negative thing at all, but rather a reinforcement of a very positive focus. That's what we're stating here, a very positive focus. Any different? Any other comments on that section? We ready to go to increased accelerated recurring? We ready? Seems to be. Money. That's why you and David come, I think. It's about money, I believe. So we want to be sure we get it right for y'all. Okay. Increased accelerated recurring funding is urgently needed at local, state, federal levels to implement much needed transformational restoration projects, remedial actions. Immediate needs include. Okay, now we're talking about WARDA. Look down through that if you've not had opportunity, see if you have changes you would wish to make to that first reauthorization and funding appropriations paragraph.
Are you talking about the increased accelerated and?
Yes, sir. We're talking about that first paragraph under that, the first bullet.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not really sure where it would go, but at some point I think we need to include in here that this is a multi-million-dollar project. And we need to get people accustomed to the idea that a few dollars here or there is not going to do it. That, our budget as currently constructed is throwing an ice cube into the ocean. We need to have a lot more money spent, and we really do need to get the idea out there that this is something that is going to take a considerable amount of money to get done.
Multi-billion-dollar project.
Multi-billion would be fine with me. Multi-million, I was trying to be a little bit conservative. Multi-billion would be accurate.
Well, I mean, when we look at even this first adventure that's being proposed by the governor of this 50-50 on septic sewer, that's, I know for us, and we're little guys, and some of y'all are 100,000 septics. We're less than 20. We're 18 or 19, and so we're at, Deb, I'm going to say we're up around 250, 300 million for what our total project. I'm not. 500, okay, see, that's why I asked Deb. She knows what she's talking about. So 538 for us. And we're little. We're a tenth. We're a tenth of what some of these, the two big counties are. We're a tenth. So we're looking at billions of dollars to help address that one aspect.
And we would be a lot more, and that has nothing to do with replumbing the state of Florida,
No.
which would be billions.
No, nothing. All that does is just fix some, anyhow. Please. Yes, ma'am.
For the record, I wanted to clarify, $138 million of septic disc conversions have been identified to be done in Martin County. I thought I heard you say 538 million, and I wanted to make sure.
Well, you did hear me say that, and the reason I said that is that there were four elements of what we were doing. And some of that was our internal monies from the utilities, and some of it was TIF monies, and some of it was individuals that were coming up with about $10,000 each, and that's, and
Okay,
so.
just to clarify.
No, you did, and you were correct,
Okay, thanks.
as usual.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, please.
I think Commissioner Daniels makes a good point. And you could insert it in the intro here after much needed multi-billion-dollar transformational restoration projects.
Is that good, Doug?
That's good. That's perfect, actually.
Okay.
And that's, I think it's multi-billion because you're including SERP.
Yeah.
You know, it's definitely, if you take SERP out, it's hundreds of millions. But we know it goes over when you.
We've seen it happen. Is that good?
I think it's good, but I do want to make a comment. That one of the concerns that I've had over the decades is that we talk about cost and not return on investment value. So then one of the reasons I didn't put economic dollars on the projections on this is that I almost think there's a need for a value proposition document. We've got really strong analytics coming in from Brevard County that shows a 20-to-1 return on investment value. The new document that was just done by the Treasure Coast and East Central Florida Regional Planning Councils on the low end had 33-to-1. And so I worry about throwing out the billions of dollars without having additional information on return on investment, because it's easy to go, well, we can't afford that because we're talking about cost rather than contributed value. So I have no problem with the addition. I'm concerned about not having a full discussion about economics when we throw out billions of dollars of cost.
But what if you, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
But what if you added at the end of that remediation actions with the projected return of 20-to-1, or an estimated return on the investment of 20-to-1, or 33-to-1, or some number, you know.
That's where it starts to get technically complicated, because the parameters of those analyses were very specifically defined. So I can't say 33-to-1 for the Lagoon in general unless you understand the constraints of the analysis. Same thing with Brevard's, was very Brevard specific. But we do know the return on investment's going to be high.
So then we just make it more general then and say with a projected significant return on investment.
I think that'd be great.
Chair.
Yes, sir, please.
Could we include statement something to that effect with a general return on investment estimated from between 20 and 33-to-1? Could you throw that in?
We could. These are still, they're just hitting the street, and they're kind of final drafts, and so there's a little bit of me that wants to really use those numbers, and a little bit of me that wants to see kind of how they stand the test of the viewpoints from outside. Those are big numbers. You don't see industries in that 20 to 30-to-1, and so even if they were off by 50%, they're still massive. But I don't want to quote them yet until we have final drafts and we've seen them vet a little bit in the community.
Okay, the underlying concern that's been raised is that if we pose what the cost will truly be, and it will be billions, and if we pose that in the upfront, that some people might become dissuaded from even participating and back off, and that's my interpretation.
And here's the
of what you
eternal
said.
optimist in me, that we begin to move forward with really aggressive, immediate restoration actions, and we find this system actually way more resilient than we think. And as we do adaptive management, that we get restoration and get smarter in restoration. And so our cost projections today go down because we're quicker, smarter, and better as we learn project by project. So rather than, and that's the advantage of moving quickly. You know, time is money, but if, you know, as you do projects, you get better at it, you're going to save money as you get smarter and better. And so it's hard to predict at the end game what these actual costs will be until we get there. But we know they're big and we know they're multi-billion.
You know, Mr. Chairman, one thing we could do is put in the current estimates are such, and as they change them. They do change them, but, you know, put in what the current estimates are now. You know, and if you've got an estimate for Brevard County alone, it would show a estimate of blank. Put in what you got. Don't claim more than you have. I'm not saying claiming anything you don't have. And if they change over time, then they change over time and put in the new numbers.
We've got some folks here.
Well, it's an observation. I think it all has to feed into, and Commissioner Daniels, I think you're right on it, I think it all has to feed into a critical paradigm shift with folks. Yes, when you put it in billions, that's huge, but when you put it in the context of what we invest in other resources, like roads, for example, or healthcare, or you know, safety, DOT budget, for example, in the state of Florida is $6 billion. Well, that's 2 SERPs every year. You know, people realize, and they're feeding in the return on investment to that, but when they start saying, yeah, we've got to elevate it as a priority and make that investment, then the billions are more understood. I mean, that's a general statement, but I think it has to feed that instead of coming at it from a fear angle of, wow, this is billions and it's insurmountable. One example, and I'll leave it at that, was following up with a friend in the Keys and their reinvestment in septic to sewer, and he was critical, saying, wow, you know, it doubled my water bill. Well, what was that? You know, it went from 40 to 80 or something. And I said, well, what do you pay for cable TV? You know, and it was $200, and it kind of, oh yeah, you know, it changed the conversation. I think we got to look for opportunities to, in a general sense, shift that paradigm.
Drew, you had a comment.
Yeah, I'm sort of rethinking my suggestion on the edit, and I'm thinking of this as a document that, you know, lives for a while, and you know, Dwayne, when he's talking to an appropriator, you know, trying to, you know, hand his staff a leave behind, and we're not going to ask for $1 billion in any given year, right? So it's going to be maybe hundreds of millions in a given year. So I don't want this word billion to catch someone's eye and then they just put it in the unrealistic pile.
Yeah.
You know,
that's a concern.
Hundreds of millions over time kind of thing.
Yeah, that would be better, I think.
Okay, there was a modification made. What was that? Kathy, did you catch it? I did.
Hundreds of millions over time.
Okay. Is that good? Everybody good on that? Everybody good? Dwayne,
I mean, it's terrible grammar now, but it's otherwise.
Dwayne, you good? Say name and association, please. No, into the mic so we can.
Jim David, Management Committee. I just want to point out that with 32 years of experience in coastal restoration, which nobody else in this room has, and which I do, I want to point out that ROI is a great perspective. But ROI is usually calculated to completed outcome. And you're going to be funding projects like aerators off of Sykes Creek to save fish, or aerators along the lagoon and aerator fields to burn off organics, or maybe shunts that take the lake water and run it to the St. Lucie Inlet instead of letting it spread all over the estuary where it throws algae in everybody's front yard. These are component projects that you would not be able to take an ROI and create absolutely. What I'm suggesting is the ROI concept is very good, but the ROI would be at completion, at full completed outcome perspective. In other words, you can't hold each component restoration to a very specific outcome. I restored 4,000 acres of wetlands over 32 years. In any 1 year, I did not accomplish $10 million of restoration, okay? What I did accomplish was 1 or 2 million. So the ROI at the end was like, I guess, I think my understanding, $30 million worth of restoration value came out of 4,000 acres, or 10,000, 40 million, $10,000 an acre. So all of that works, but you have to understand it's piecemeal, it's funded by project, so your ROI needs to be connected to at full outcome of what we envision for the lagoon. Again, we could stop fish kills off of Sykes Creek and Bananock River tomorrow with aerators. They would prevent low oxygen at night. They would also oxidize all your organics in that area. You just need to do it to stop it. But drawing an ROI, doing that to say, gee, we're going to save $10 million worth of fisheries tomorrow, it'd be kind of hard to say, you know, right off the bat that that's what you're going to accomplish by doing it. You're just going to stop the fish kills. So that's my point. You can take, there's a lot of emergency actions that need to be taken, a lot of great beneficial projects that are being done, linking it only to ROI instead of ROI at outcome. Because until you get all the organics off the floor of the marsh, of the wetland, or off the floor of the lagoon that have been put there with 75 years of dumping, you're really not going to fix the lagoon. So this is a process, a stepwise process, and again, the ROI should be at outcome, at full completion of concept, not just by project.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Appreciate your observation.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, please.
I'm not so sure that I agree totally with that. I think that statement, I think that getting the lagoon in a better condition certainly is a return on investment. The one suggestion that I'd make where it says on ROI, you could say just double digit, an expected double digit ROI return or something like that.
I'm going to make a suggestion, Mr. Chairman, because Jim David's point is well taken, although I could argue that certain types of restoration, you can do ROI in both spatial and temporal scale. But he's right that the full high-value restoration component, the end game on this is a healthy lagoon. And in your collective agreement that less is more with words, you know, I think being able to state that we need funding, and I would, as much as I agree that getting billions out there, I don't know that this is the document to be kind of projecting what costs might be. That you might want to just say with an estimated high return on investment value from a healthy Indian River lagoon, you know, because really, if you think about this, the general public, the communities, you know, the people that we're interacting with the day to day, they're really, what they're looking for is clean water. They're looking for fisheries. They're looking for that quality of life that they remember that they once had, and especially down in the southern counties that they actually don't have at all right now. And so I think because everybody knows this is expensive, that if, you know, this funding is going to get us, and this is where Jim's point I think is very well taken, that the end game for this is a healthy Indian River lagoon. And how we get there is kind of the details of our day-to-day jobs, but our goal right now is in these 5 bullet points to identify kind of the responsibility and opportunities at federal, state, and local levels. So my suggestion just from the staff side is to strike the projection of cost and just add with an estimated high return on investment value from a healthy Indian River lagoon, which is visionary, kind of broad, and it doesn't get us in the weeds of economic analysis.
Would you have the word
Put the word for, I'll put the word for in there, for a healthy Indian River Lagoon.
Or from.
Right.
Mr. Chairman.
Sir, please.
I don't want to disagree with the executive director, but I do think we need to get the numbers out there. There are a lot of people who do not know what the numbers are to get this done. Certainly in Washington, and you'd probably be surprised at how many people in Tallahassee would not understand either. And we need to make the magnitude of the problem clear, but that there is a return on investment, economic return on investment, which totally ignores the rest of the return on investment, which is a healthy lagoon is worth something in and of itself. And it's very difficult to measure that. But I do think that we need to not shy away from the fact that this is going to be an expensive proposition that will need to perhaps be done over time, that is going to cost a lot of money, that we just need to back our ears and face the fact.
Councilman, I got some language that might get you there.
Okay.
Second sentence. How about immediate investment needs for this multi-billion-dollar initiative include?
Very good.
Yeah, I like it.
Multi-million?
Amy, you had a comment you wanted to make, please, ma'am? Please. And if you would, state your name and your association.
Amy Adams, Cape Canaveral Scientific. I'm not really too sure where to put it in here, but nowhere in here have I seen probably the most important thing to anybody that lives in this area, which is human health. And so you're talking about the health of the estuary, but you're not talking about what happens to the estuary happens to us. So when you have a harmful algal bloom, the return on investment for that is dead people, dead fish. But people are more concerned and will pay for their human health versus any other thing in the world. So if you say septic tanks immediately or over 10 years could kill X number of people, that's when they say we need to put dollars in it. When we say we have a disaster in the area and 5 people died, that area gets money versus an area where, you know, it destroyed a bunch of crops or it destroyed some environment. So I don't want to come in with a building on fire, but we have people that have gotten, you know, some sort of virus or something as a result of an algal bloom, and they have died. So it's just a matter of time. I mean, we are one of the estuaries in the nation that is slowest to address contaminants, you know, things that are in our over-the-counter, you know, personal care products like paraben and all of the hand soap that we use. All of those, over time, bioaccumulate in our system and are killing our fish right now, and they will eventually kill us. So we haven't addressed any of those issues. Florida is the slowest to address. Tampa Bay is doing it, Charlotte Harbor is, but Indian River is not. So what I'm just saying is we haven't stepped up to the plate yet, and the biggest button you can push is human health. I have not seen human health in this anywhere. So I think if I were a governor or if I were a congressman and somebody was talking about human health over estuary health or they're connected, I would look at that first over dead fish, over, okay, our manatees are looking sick. People are sick. People are not, when they fish, they throw the fish back. They don't even touch the fish. You know, they're not swimming in our lagoon. They're not using it the way they used to. And that's because it's in deep trouble, and it's a human health problem at this point. So I just would like to add that in somewhere, because I think that's a return on investment. Our return on investment, the dollars that come out of it for business is great. But if you have people dying and don't want to use it and are moving away from the area because of human health issues, I think that's a decline on investment that we need to show. And I know you want to be positive in this, but human health brings dollars in much faster than anything else.
I think you did well in presenting your point. Thank you so much
Mr.
for
Chairman,
taking.
and I think you can be positive with that. You can say that the positive would be the return on investment, the ultimate return on investment would be human health itself.
So, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like suggested language on that, you could add that to the end of the sentence that ends with a healthy Indian River Lagoon. So it'd be high return on investment value from a healthy Indian River Lagoon. And
Mr. Chairman, while he's
I don't
thinking-
know, I'm trying to think of language. I mean, we're talking about healthy communities that live along the lagoon, but I'm trying to get the language tight for you.
Mr. Chairman, while he's thinking, this may help you.
Go ahead, Chris.
To her point, I come from the airline industry, and the FAA didn't make changes until there was a body count. That was clear in the industry. But I was waiting to make this point, but thank you, Amy, for bringing it up now. Under the bullet, increased congressional funding for harmful algae bloom research on the health, welfare, and possible deaths associated with toxic algal blooms. So instead of taking it in the top sentence, moving it down to the increased funding for harmful algal bloom research, which would include human health and the aspects of cyanobacteria on individuals, humans, whatever.
No, that's a good point. It's not directly to the point we had. Actually, just put harmful algal bloom research, implications for human health right after that research, because the research is really, there's a lot we don't know about toxicants and the range. So implications for human health, comma, and then monitoring mapping. And what Amy was talking about was a combination. It's not just the human health implication of toxic blooms, but she was thinking about human health implications in general from pollutants and toxicants. And so going back to the top, so high return on investment value from a healthy Indian River Lagoon and healthy lagoon human communities. I'm just throwing that out. I'm sure you can wordsmith it, but I wanted to make sure we captured the thought.
The typical term.
Wait,
public-
just a
I'm sorry.
second, just a second. How's that do?
I'm just, again, I think it just has to be mentioned that, human health is a significant part of this, and there is already some research out there that cyanobacteria is a contributor to dementia and or ALS. I don't have that documentation with me, or even, I can't cite it, but it has been suggested that each have been considered contributing factors to dementia and ALS at a minimum.
Thank you, sir. Jim?
Yeah, we
please
typically
state your
refer to
name-
that as
state
public
your-
health.
State your name and your association,
Yeah,
please.
James David, Management Committee, we typically refer to that as public health. Not human health, but public health. It's just part of the overarching goal and role of public health to maintain everyone's health in the community.
Very good. Thank you, sir. How does that fit in with what you're trying to formulate?
No, that's great.
Public health and goal.
Got it.
Kathy, you're good?
You have a line at the top also which says human health, if you want to change that one to public health. That way they're consistent.
Great.
Come.
Amy, are you going to take them up to the very beginning?
No, I was just going to add healthy communities.
Come to the mic so it'll be on the record.
Because we were just looking at, there's an introductory statement in the paragraph that
Yeah.
needs to include this.
Health. Yeah, I was just going to add the word healthy. In the very, very beginning, the first thing that they read is River Lagoon Estuary Program significance, ecological, economic, quality of life benefits that define health and sustain the healthy communities and healthy citizens, or the healthy communities and citizens of our who live and work and play and so forth. In that very first sentence, because that introduces the need for health. I'm not really too sure where you want to go with the other parts of health.
Well, don't get away, so Kathy's got to...
Communities and
Do we
health
want to
of
say healthy
citizens.
citizens
Add
or healthy
health in front of it.
communities?
You can say just and public health of citizens.
Is that good?
Got it.
You good?
I'm good with,
You
yeah, however you want to put it.
Good? How are we on that? What we've done is we've bopped back to the first page, the first paragraph
about
for
that.
this modification, but but it sets the stage. So this is essential. Are we good? Everybody good? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. Thank you very much. Appreciate Jim. Thank you very much for that. All right. We're going to motor through this here in just a minute.
Great, good.
Funding, are we at funding appropriations for the 216 Congress? Congressional reauthorization, national, are we there?
Yes.
Is that where we are? Other than say yes and hurry up, what else?
Mr. Chair?
Please.
If I might be selfish again, instead of advocating for the 28 NEPs, why not advocate for the Indian River Lagoon NEP?
Well, I certainly wanted, now, candidly, we crafted the document to favor us to begin with.
Right.
So I don't know if we want to just overtly draw that to their attention, but yes.
Right.
No, whatever. Okay, Dwayne,
Well, I'm good with it, but that reauthorization isn't going to be Indian River Lagoon specific at the federal level. It's going to be for all 28. So reauthorization, actually, let me correct my statement. Reauthorization has already been completed and passed. So where we are with the NEPs is basically appropriation. And appropriation is going to be not lagoon specific or estuary specific, it'll be program specific to the EPA. So I think in the statement we could say as soon as possible for the Indian River Lagoon and the other 27 NEPs, because they're going to come not individually at the federal level. But
all right, so we need to change congressional reauthorization to congressional appropriations.
Well, it was congressionally reauthorized, so funding for the 216 congressionally reauthorized, and maybe that is poorly worded because reauthorization has happened.
Yeah, well, that's what I was wondering if we want to say, and Pam may have a better word for that, or David, but what we're looking at is because it has been reauthorized, but we want the money so it can be implemented. So what word do we need to say that to show our awareness?
With congressional reauthorization of the...
And appropriation?
Well, I'm saying that with the reauthorization, there's an expectation of...
well, we certainly are expecting
appropriations.
But we're hopeful. We're hopeful.
Mr. Chairman,
please.
I think it's fine just the way it is.
Okay, but it was more focused on we won't get the money unless it takes that next step.
But that's the way things work. The authorization comes first, and then funding comes later.
Well,
Mr. Chairman, I think I have a solution for this. Second sentence: expanded funding during appropriations of the reauthorized bill should be made available as soon as possible.
Like it.
That good, Pam? Were you able to decipher that? Okay.
Emailing George and Pat and Mark
Okay.
and asking where we are on the appropriations, because I thought we were finished with that, but you're saying...
Well, I got the impression when I was up in D.C. 2 weeks ago that you know, the actual appropriation process, nobody was quite sure what the timeline was.
Okay. I'm asking that question.
Yes, ma'am. Okay. But otherwise, is the rewords from Dwayne okay? Are we okay with that?
I just want to concur with Dr. DeFries. I did meet with the chairman of the committee, Schuster, and he indicated that authorization still needed to be done.
Okay.
So.
All right. So at least 2 weeks ago that
Appropriations.
Yeah, at least 2 weeks ago. Okay, so we're okay with the modification that was made? You're good? Tell me.
Just going to, should be made available as soon as possible for the Indian River Lagoon and the other 27 NEPs. How does that sound?
Yeah, that's good. Are we okay with that modification? Everybody okay? Was there any public? I see none. Okay, let's move on then. We'll go to increased congressional funding for harmful algal blooms research. Then we talk about the implications for public health. These are elements of funding that we wish to accomplish. We have comments on this, please. Yes, sir?
Just one addition, and I caught this after, and it's just a minor point, but we've got a lot of emerging harmful algal bloom kind of critters out there that we didn't anticipate. So I would just, on the end of that one, say, increased attention to toxic cyanobacterial blooms, comma, non-toxic brown tide blooms, and emerging harmful algal blooms of concern.
Drew, you good with that? Is that okay? Anybody else have comment on that? Is that acceptable? Thank you, sir. Florida 2016 Legacy Act.
So I've got technical corrections on this.
Please.
So the, you need to put Florida Legacy the Florida 2016 Legacy Act provided a minimum of $200 million of annual funding from, and then you just need, we got to get away from Amendment 1 because there's been another Amendment 1 in the, but dock stamp revenues.
Okay. Instead of Amendment 1,
yeah.
State.
Right.
Or restoration efforts associated with the Everglades. And then you strike the rest because there's, the $200 million is for the Everglades.
Yeah.
Or it's really comprehensive. I mean, it's really for greater than the Everglades because it includes, so I associated with the Everglades,
SERP
St.
program?
Lucie, and Caloosahatchee estuaries.
For the Everglades SERP program?
It's more than SERP even. Yeah, it's also NEEP, to throw another acronym in, but Northern Everglades and Estuaries Protection. So it's...
So maybe we should modify it with those.
I just think I think it's fine to say efforts associated with the Everglades.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Drew, just the Everglades?
The
period
I mean,
after
honestly, the big water bodies are Everglades, St. Lucie, Caloosahatchee, and Lake O. I mean, those are the big ones. But it's all associated with the Everglades, so you know, I could go any direction on that.
I think leaving it simple with the Everglades would be appropriate.
We want to ride that coattail.
But one concern, at least from the northern Indian River Lagoon, is those dollars in Legacy 1 won't impact Volusia County, Brevard County, Indian River County.
Right.
That's correct.
Indeed. No, I really didn't understand the reason for taking out Amendment 1, you know, what was the thinking there?
I think we've already had a ballot in between that one, where another Amendment 1 was passed, because they're just numbers on a ballot. So we all know what Amendment 1 means, but appropriators, you know, don't necessarily. And the Amendment 1 ballot set aside dock stamps. And so the dock stamp revenues, and then the Legacy Act further said which part of those I mean, it didn't say Amendment 1 in the Legacy Act, it said dock stamp revenues, and it talked about which dock stamp revenues it was. So it's just clarification. And it kind of makes the point that it is dock stamp revenues. I mean, that's what it is.
Well, you know, from what I understand, Amendment 1 is going to generate another $50 million this year, and we would certainly like our share spent in Volusia County.
Well, I think it generates about 850 total.
And honestly, I think that's the second.
Is what I understand, but I may be wrong.
Commissioner, I think that's what the second sentence gets at. It is expanding beyond the Everglades to take care of the rest of the lagoon.
All right.
Are there other comments on this portion?
Just excuse me, just for clarity, documentary stamp on that, so you have the full name.
Right. Thank you, sir. Other comments, public comments on this portion? I see none additional. We'll move on.
Oh, wait a second.
Oh, please.
Yeah, so on Commissioner Daniels' point, the second sentence does need to be clarified to not just talk about Florida estuaries and coastal waters, but talk about Indian River Lagoon. So, I mean, it seems more pointed on our ask to ask leadership for restoration and stewardship of the Indian River Lagoon.
Particularly the northern part, because...
Yeah, particularly Volusia County.
There's particularly Volusia County, because they've got a lot of money left over.
He was taking advantage of you when you went out of the room.
That was a good point.
But, and Brevard's problems are our problems, too. I mean, Brevard's problems come up all over Canal, and everything's connected, and we all get that. But, that kind of money or even a portion of that kind of money in Volusia County would make a significant amount of difference. Most of Mosquito Lagoon is controlled by the National Park Service. We've got a couple of cities that maybe need to do a little better than what they're doing. Some septic tanks need to be connected up, and we would be in reasonable shape other than northern Brevard County, which is probably fixable too. We could probably take care of the northern part of the lagoon without vast expenditures of money. I do understand that the southern part is going to take a ton of money. I've got that completely. But our part is, very significant to us, and something that is, reasonably fixable.
All right, so we've made a modification here, and what we've done is to focus in on the IRL. And that's going to be the focus of our interactive request. Is that acceptable? The public have a comment on that? Is that acceptable to the board members? Anyone have any difference on that? All right, let's move on. It's time to become Indian River Lagoon friendly. Yes, sir, please. Who has? Yes, sir, please.
You skipped a bullet.
One more bullet.
There's one more bullet there. Local communities.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Thank you very much.
I just have a small edit on that one, and it's just the very last phrase, impacts to IRL water quality. I think we need to say habitat and water quality.
That's well taken.
Yeah.
Well taken. Well taken. Jim, do you want to give affirmation to his suggestion?
Sure. I also would like, Jim David, Management Committee, I also like to add the words restoration goals and processes in there after the word pollution loads, because local governments can get involved in restoration. We did for the last 40 years in the estuary. And there's a lot that local communities can do for themselves to not only monitor the problem, but also to establish their own particular local goals and the processes that they'd like to see shared. One of the problems that we've always had is governmental barriers. So this would help to share this internally within this organization.
That's well taken. Does everyone appreciate his suggestion? Kathy, were you able to, okay?
Kathy,
Dwayne,
you're going to need to have a second sentence, because that sentence is talking about negative impacts.
Yeah.
These restoration goals are, addressing kind of the other things that you can do. So they're going to identify, so we're identifying impacts. You could say, in addition, local community funding is required to meet restoration goals and monitoring requirements, or something along those lines.
Do we have, we need to sort of smooth that off a little bit.
It is a huge sentence.
Somebody have a suggestion on that, please?
I mean, I don't think you should just focus on funding. I think it should say, in addition, local communities are necessary, or,
Yes.
are critical to meet restoration goals.
I think, Dwayne, you appreciate that?
Yes,
that
very much so.
inclusion? Okay, so we're going, yes, are critical to meeting restoration goals and monitoring requirements. Everybody see where we are? Is there any, yes, sir, Kurt?
I would like to defer to the smart people here. But I don't think "and monitoring requirements" is needed there, because part of monitoring would be meeting restoration goals.
I think monitoring is a key element in what we're doing, and we need to hit that every time we can so that people will become more aware of the essentials of the monitoring. That's my perspective, because it's sort of...
That's why I said
it's
I
sort of
want
the
to
catfight.
defer to the smart people up here, not me.
Jim David, Management Committee, just maybe local communities' contributions are critical to meeting restoration goals and monitoring requirements.
That's fine.
Just
Well, before you
make
change
it
it all
connect.
together, Kathy, wait a minute. Dwayne, do you
They could
look
be,
at that, please?
I think it'd be local community contributions, but that's, yeah. I don't have a problem with that.
You're good with that? Everybody okay with that? Modification?
We might be able to wordsmith that last paragraph better. I'm just thinking that we start off with we start off almost where we end up. We start off with that, then we say via. I'd just like to maybe have Dwayne kind of wordsmith that. I think that it's a run-on sentence that goes on forever.
Well, in your intent to be succinct, you could just say local communities need to identify their impacts to the lagoon, get rid of all the examples.
Right.
Yeah.
I like that
And just
better.
go right
Yeah.
to, you're going to identify your impacts, you're going to address those impacts, and you're going to contribute to restoration goals and
Yeah, the shotgun
monitoring.
approach doesn't work. I think I'd rather be right to the point here.
Good point. Other comments on that point? Drew, please?
No, let's see how it looks.
Okay.
Yeah, Kathy, go ahead and strike that whole section and then...
The whole thing, or do you want to keep the policy?
No, all the way
development?
down, all the examples of negative impacts, just, because in a way, there are impacts probably we have that we haven't even identified yet.
You could, yeah, that could.
So there's no reason to
expanded.
go through the litany of what those impacts are.
Right.
Well, we will be doing that in the Comprehensive Conservation Management Plan revision.
It's fixing to go here in a second.
I mean, and then do what,
Yeah, we don't need in addition anymore, so Kathy, maybe just clean that and drop the statement below so we can see it.
Amy, you had a comment, please, ma'am?
So when we went and wrote these two large paragraphs, the first one, remove, reduce.
We're back on
da-da-da.
page one.
We started out with a verb, right? And we showed the action, what we wanted to do. On the second back page, we have these really long sentences that start with telling us about reauthorization and refund and so forth, but it doesn't tell us what you want them to do. So my request is that you flip the action, put it in the front, and then give the background statement. So, because some of these are just quick phrases, and then some of them are long sentences. Like the last one is a complete sentence. It's a long, long sentence with a verb in the middle somewhere. So I'm just saying, can we, like we did on the front, use the verb first so that it's more like a bulleted item since you have bullets? You see what I'm saying? So, funding appropriations for congressional, you should say expand funding and reauthorizations bills. Do you see what I'm saying? As we've done with the da-da-da. Do you see what I'm saying there?
Well, you're on
Where I
the
am?
second bullet.
So if I look at the second bullet, we say expanded funding and reauthorization bills should be made. So instead of putting that second, you're asking somebody to do an action item, put that request first, and then tell them what that's similar to. Do you see what I'm saying? So that
Yes,
they know
ma'am.
what you're asking.
Yes,
You
ma'am.
give them the action item, action first, the verb first, just like you did on this. You told them what you want, and then you explained what it's similar to, or what the background statement was.
Okay, I know where she's going.
See what I'm saying? It's
Kathy,
just-
go up to,
Read
no, no,
all
no,
the-
leave that. Go right to that first bullet.
You know what I mean?
So that one will be
gotcha.
accelerate
Okay.
reauthorization and funding.
Yeah,
So
it just
accelerate
put a
would not
verb in the
be
beginning
first
and
bullet.
put it in caps, just like you did on the
Well,
first
that'll
page.
work there,
You know what I
too.
mean? And put it in bold, so that they know what
Good.
they're being requested.
Good structural observation.
Sorry, I'm just
No,
trying
So
to
Kathy,
pull people along so that
bullet
they read.
one and
Did
bullet
well.
two will start with accelerate. Go ahead and do that again. And we'll make sure the verb tenses are clear so we don't waste time with
Yeah,
that
I mean,
issue.
It's something you can go back and do later, just flip the sentences around and clean them up a little bit?
Increase on number 3. No, increase. So it's going to be an action verb. Number 4 will be, go ahead.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, don't worry about the minor grammar. Let's just get this through. The 4th verb is going to be consider, and we'll flip those sentences. So you're going to consider the action on the table similar to what was done with Florida Legacy. And the last one will be identify.
Yeah,
See, that will flip later.
right. Well, okay. Identify?
Yeah. Or urge local communities to identify, or something like that, or, I don't know.
Yeah, what Amy
Because your
just-
local communities, you all said, is the most important, critical
Yeah.
group to do that. So.
Here we go. There's really, because we're talking about funding here. It's going to be identify local community impacts.
Yeah.
And address and implement solutions. And then just the sentence, local community contributions are critical to meeting restoration
To
goals.
meet restoration.
And I don't,
To meet.
I don't want to look at it maybe a little more, because what I think the flow is we're asking local communities to do this. And so we're urging the local communities to identify. We're urging them to take
Yeah, we're
the
not
action. But
directing.
y'all smooth that off. And Kathy and Amy, you did, thank you, ma'am.
Some wordsmithing.
Thank you very much. Any other comments to these? Kathy, you'll make those adjustments, you and Diane will
Let's
do
go
Yeah, we'll-
ahead.
We'll
and-
clean it up in the office.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead on the consider paragraph and just cut and paste, consider that second sentence up there. Consider a similar bill, right? Because I'm,
Going right here?
yep. And then that's,
So it would be
I think I
consider a
understand.
similar bill
To the Florida
to the
Legacy.
Florida 2016
Yeah. That can be.
Legacy Act.
Other comment to that? Public?
Well,
That flows. That makes it flow. Okay,
Yep.
we're good? We're good? Okay.
You're going to clean up the,
it's got to be cleaned up.
Well, yeah, there's some smoothness we need there.
Kathy, I'm so glad you're doing this.
Yeah,
Thank you.
She's doing an outstanding job, I do.
It'll be clean by the time you see it again.
I'm sure it will. You're doing well now. Great day. Yes, sir, Jim.
David, Management Committee, I think you left out to identify. Urge local communities to identify impacts that we're looking at.
Okay.
The word got
Great,
lost.
thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jim. Thank you very much.
Kathy, to identify impacts.
Identify impacts,
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Same thing as we currently the next paragraph down.
It's,
The impacts after communities.
okay, everybody. Amy, that's smooth now? Okay. We're good on that? We're ready to move to the last paragraph?
I got a suggestion
Yes,
there.
please.
I think it's time to be a little more dramatic. I think instead of it's time to become Indian River Lagoon friendly, I'd rather something say, and just a shot in the dark, it's time to embrace and protect the Indian River Lagoon.
That's good? We good? Everybody, is that okay?
how about the national treasure of the Indian River Lagoon?
It's time to embrace and protect our national treasure, the Indian River.
Our
Lagoon.
national, not the, our national
National.
treasure.
Is that good?
Because then it'll
Thank
get
you,
all
sir.
your congressmen to
Thank you, sir.
buy in that it's national need.
Especially the treasure part of it. well, natural, but I think we said natural.
Oh, did you say national?
National.
The nation? Because if you're going to give it to congressional members that are going to want to support it,
Yeah.
they want to know that there's...
It's good, and that's, we need to convey that thought.
Yeah.
We need to convey that thought, yes. Yes. Good, we good?
Good.
We good? Everybody good? Yes, sir, please, Drew.
I've got just a
Okay.
edit to the bullet.
All right, good.
Halfway down, it says, "We can heed the summer fertilizer bans in place for all Lagoon counties." I think we should say, "We can heed the fertilizer ordinances
Yes,
in place in all Lagoon counties," because there's a lot more to it than just the ban.
you're right.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Good observation. Other comments? Public? Public? Other comments? We're on the last. The IRL Council, the IRL NEP stand ready to work with citizens, scientists, policymakers, and our local, state, and national partners to ensure that the IRL's environmental, economic, and quality of life assets are restored, protected today, and for future generations. How would we like to modify that? Comments? Public? What you want to say?
Help to it as well and look for protected
If you,
Come up
please.
to the mic, please.
Please. Yes, ma'am.
Just to reiterate on the
And-
public
and
health.
I'm sorry, but your name and
Katie, Kathleen Albee, Hope Sound. Reiterate on the public health, maybe add it after restored, and public health protected.
That was
How about
Thank you
economic,
for-
and economic, public health, and quality of
Public
life?
health in relation to the, health effects that, people dying and all that.
Yeah,
getting
no, that's a good awareness. That's a good awareness. Did
I
you-
just have a quick one. Kathy, I'm going to come up. Patrick just mentioned this. Come up a little bit. And more. So in that second group, you were talking about actions, immediate investment needs. So down here we're in actions, so this would be immediate investment actions
Yes,
for this multi-billion. Then we
Yes.
have action in both parts.
right.
Good job.
Good catch.
That wasn't me, that was Patrick.
Patrick, you did well. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kathy, if you'll scroll up just a little bit, where it's time to embrace and protect. In keeping with a positive theme to this, consider with the full participation of individuals, comprehensive IRL restoration can be achieved.
Good.
Yep.
That was a good modification, Frank. Thank you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Lisa Grimsky, University of Florida IFAS Extension. I think since this was changed to actions, perhaps a recommendation to add sort of current implementation of the existing BMAP, CCMP, swim plans, just to show that the investment that's already been put into this and that you're not leaving that behind, that you're going to continue to move forward with these existing plans for the system.
That was very useful observation. All right, how are we going to incorporate that? That will be reflective in the CCMP, all of those other elements, but how are we wanting to reflect that here, please? Drew, you had a thought on that?
Did you have a suggestion on where to put that? I don't know where to put it.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to raise that also in the last sentence where it says citizens need to recognize, but also to understand or to include the basin management action plans so that it's inclusive in that last paragraph. Now, it'll need definition and people would, who may be reading it may not understand what a basin management action plan is, but, but at least it's listed that we have done and have spent significant amounts of money on basin management action plans and implementing those along the lagoon.
Okay, so that was one element, the swim, and I think you mentioned a third.
So,
Oh, well, yeah, the CCMP, that's part
so
of
is
it.
it just a new sentence? We can implement BMAP, SWIM, CCMP. Is that just a whole new sentence within all the litany of sentences there?
Would that maybe be more appropriate at the local community level? Because it's the communities that are really implementing BMAPs, right? It's sort of local governments, cities and towns.
Yeah, the local, us, yes, local. Yes, sir, please, Kev.
I think those are all excellent thoughts. My concern is that by bringing in the alphabet soup, it kind of takes it more to a technical document and takes it away from that casual reader that says, yeah, this is not a technical document. That's all. Because you have to, swim plan, what is that? You have to call that out. You have to call out, basin management action plan, what is that? So I just think, again, I think we got a great product here. I think those are excellent points. I just don't want to see us drift too much into alphabet soup.
Well, but basin, I don't even know, if I were just out in the cold and somebody said basin action management plan, I'm not sure that conveys.
Exactly.
Any more than BMPs. Yeah. But anyhow, I think you're well taken. It's just now how to deal with that. Swim, we can say service.
I think to capture the point that's there, though, is that's to continue or to remind of the investment that's already been made. This isn't a starting point. This is a continuation, and you need to capture that.
Exact point might be what we want to convey. That we want, this is a renewed emphasis in, and this isn't words, this is concept, but it really was your concept. So it's an intensified emphasis of the investments that we all have already made. So
you're bringing forward the investments that have already been made.
And
Amy's wanting to, because she's got the words, so she.
So, we just have one big giant paragraph here with all these sentences in it, and we're starting it again with a noun. We'd need to go to an action verb. So we can even break these up into several bullets, saying urge citizens to recognize their individual impacts. Instead of we can reduce the amounts of fertilizer, just say adopt reductions in fertilizer and harmful chemicals applied to our lawns and gardens, heed summer, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Go about it that way, so you break them down into choppy bullets so that they can see.
Yep.
Kathy, just do another bullet.
Just do another bullet.
Or just drop them as bullets.
Yep. Just change that to heed,
yep,
or promote, whatever. And then dispose of lawn. And then protect neighborhoods. And then prevent and properly repair.
And the last bullet on that, because really, BMAPs, even the CCMP,
continue.
They don't function unless the citizens support it. Right. So it could be support.
Right.
And we don't have to list them. Support activities and management plans already underway.
Right. Current activities,
that, protect and restore the Indian River Lagoon.
That was a good point. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
That's good.
We're good? Mm-hmm. We're good. That was really an important point. I think that was very
And then just going back to the header for this, it's time to embrace and protect. You end your sentence, your very last sentence says, doing all these items are to restore and protect today and for future generations. I would encourage you to put protect and restore and protect instead of embrace, because how are you embracing that? We've never really told them to embrace it before. We've been talking about restoring and protecting all along. And it's just
Okay, a request for a modification on the introduction to that particular element. Is that an acceptable? You see on the screen, we've made that. Everybody good with that? Restore.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. It's just bugging me right up above where you see the red, the second bullet up, go up one, where the IRL period then has something's wrong there. I know you're going to go and clean up grammar and
we'll
stuff,
clean it
but it was making me nuts.
Thank you, sir.
Restore and protect.
Yeah, that one was a little tangled, and that's why we left it to them to square that one off. Other comments? Yes, sir, please.
This is just a question to Dwayne. I've always heard since I've lived here that the Indian River Lagoon is the most biologically diverse lagoon in America.
This is my scientific position on this, based on a long-standing argument among the community. So it is just my belief of the fact. Indian River Lagoon is one of the most biologically diverse estuaries in North America. There is no compelling scientific evidence that proves that it is the most diverse, but it sure was a catchy phrase back then. And so you see that a lot. We've had discussions about this. You may remember, who made that one presentation, John? Was it Marsh, Youngblood? Yeah, it was Harbor Branch. But it was a real compelling point of evidence that, yeah, we really don't have enough data to make that claim. We made it 25 years ago and it's stuck, but it may not be scientifically accurate. So one of the most diverse is definitely accurate, and we would hope it still is after all these problems, because we've lost a lot of biological diversity, but the most diverse, I can't state that and don't.
What other one would be more diverse with something this long going from Central Florida into South Florida? I'm just thinking out loud with you.
We've got some diversity in a number of systems. The Chesapeake Bay has a lot of diversity. Because we're long and thin, we've got a lot out there, but there are some that, have a lot also.
Well, we go through a couple of temperate zones.
Mr. Chairman, I was just thinking of adding that at the very top on page 1, the Indian River Lagoon, until someone says it's not the most biologically diverse estuary of...
I would just put one. My recommendation is one of the most.
Yeah.
I'd rather be like Waldo Sexton and just kind of stretch the truth here.
I just don't want to have to be at the mic sometime in the future where I'm going, now we're number 2. I don't know if that game is, a good game for us to play, because, there are going to be people counting, basically counting heads. And here's where it gets really complicated, and it's not a minor issue, is with the real small stuff. And so we have no idea about bacteria, some of these virus types. And so this gets into the weeds of science. One of the most biologically diverse is defensible. And since we are scientifically based, I think if you're going to go there, that would be the way to go.
I just thought of adding a descriptor kind of like that at the very beginning, just the Indian River Lagoon, one of the most biologically diverse estuaries of national significance.
We can add that right after. Kathy, go up to
Well, it certainly is going to be my story, and I'm going to stick with it.
I'd rather be told we got to, shut that baby down than...
And the basis is...
Claim it. Name it, claim it.
I'm claiming it. Every restaurant's the world's most famous.
There are two bases, as best I understand, and John could probably correct me on this. But
Right, let's sell this puppy.
Okay, let's do, because we got a couple other things we need.
Mr. Chairman, Pam Gillespie has an update from Congress.
I know I see a number of PhDs that agree with me. It is a damn diverse place that deserves everything we can get it. So let's...
So the Congressman, in answer to your question on the word of bill, have we appropriated it? He says that we've joined the Florida delegation in writing to leadership asking that it be brought to the floor for a vote. So all of Florida's looking at it and trying to get it to a floor for a vote. So hopefully that'll happen real soon.
Thank you, ma'am.
And we'll keep you updated.
Thank you, ma'am. Appreciate it. Yes, sir, Kurt?
Could we go, Kathy, could we go to the last line, the very last line?
Yes.
Support activities and management plans already. Instead of already underway, could we put already in place? Does that work better for everybody else? It works better for me.
It's good.
Good.
It's good. Are there any other suggestions, corrections, additions, modifications, whatever other adjective you want to throw in there? John, you have, please.
It's very minor.
Very, okay.
John Windsor, Melbourne, Florida. The last bolded section starts with the IRL Council and the IRL NEP.
Yes, sir.
I think you started this discussion with this document to be released just from the council. until it goes through the NEP process. And so do you want to take that out for now, or do you want to leave both of them in there? That was my only comment.
Thank you, sir. That's semi-technical? What are
It's
you-
technical, but it's significant. And so I think probably our appropriate response would be to have this finalized as an IRL council, because, you know, we are a special district of the state of Florida. We'll bring it through the NEP Management Conference, and then we can add the NEP at a later date in an amendment.
I don't see any objections to that, so that's the procedure we'll follow. Thank you, sir. All right. Good job, Kathy.
Thank you.
Well done. And we so much appreciate the input from all that cared to participate. Very kind. We do have our lady here to tell us, give us an update on the south end of the lagoon. Are you wanting to do that? Yes, ma'am. No, you're the lady.
Denied access. Figure it out later.
And then Chuck, probably you'll be ready next. Yes, ma'am, please.
Deborah Drum, Ecosystem Manager for Martin County. I'll be very brief, just to let you know that the conditions in the estuary have improved somewhat. The Army Corps of Engineers reduced the discharges to the St. Lucie to 650 CFS, and that's an average weekly. So we have 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, where the releases are 0. We've seen a commensurate increase in the salinities up to 20 parts per thousand at the Roosevelt Bridge, which has really helped the conditions considerably. On Tuesday of this week, I personally went to Central Marine and got some updated photographs where that had been sort of the ground zero place where some of the worst accumulations of algae had occurred. We had some readings in there of microcystin at 33,000 micrograms per liter, which over 10 or over 100 is extreme, 10 is dangerous. So 33,000 micrograms per liter is a very, very toxic area. On Tuesday of this week, that area was clear of algae. There was no technology that went in to remove the algae. It was just, it cleared on its own, so it looks like it's cycled through. It took about 5 weeks for that algae bloom to go away on its own. So that is information that we're going to take forward and learn from. We're trying to get some additional water quality samples in that basin to better understand what levels that we're dealing with right now. So conditions are somewhat improved. And we did get our air quality samples back. This week we released the report. It is available on our website, and we have requested a thorough analysis and review of those results through the Florida Department of Health. And so we're anxiously awaiting for their review to see if there's any information that they have for public health, issuing public health notices. There is no local, state, or federal regulatory standard for airborne microcystin toxins, so we're in a little bit of a new area of science, and that's why we're requesting assistance. Any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Please.
I had heard that trying to get salinity above around 15 is where the habitat is not good for these algal species. Is that a good rule of thumb, do you know?
Yeah, between that 15 and 20 parts per thousand seems to be where we're seeing some improvements.
Okay.
So, and it's a duration thing too. We were, many of us that were here today were at Harbor Branch yesterday getting some interesting information about the hydrodynamics and how that can be a factor in water moving through the system and the timing of that with tides. So I think that we're all, I guess, motivated to come back together technically and try to figure out if there's other ways that we could be managing water to try to reduce the impacts of the fresh water and the potential for creating the really ripe conditions for blue-green algae blooms. So. Yeah. So we're continuing to have a technical dialogue. We need to move forward and have more communication than ever as we work through these issues. So although the conditions are improved, we still have a lot of work to do moving forward.
Mr. Chairman?
Any other? Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, along these lines on the salinity side and oxygen in the estuary, in the St. Lucie River, when we presented to Congressman Murphy and others, there's NASA, NOAA, the HABS committee was there, and Dr. DeFries was there to present. Some of the conversation was increasing the salinity, and how could we do that? Jim David, the hypothesis, however you would say it, who created the hypothesis of pushing additional seawater over I'll use the FPL plant because it's easier to do it from there, and into the southern part of the lagoon could increase the salinity to a significant amount. FPL recently has done a single conduit, 14-mile single conduit, for their distribution line from the power plant under the lagoon all the way to the west to the turnpike. So they're able to complete that kind of a conduit if, in fact, there was an opportunity to use our mosquito control pumps to take water over that cooling area where the water it becomes hyper salinity based. We could actually move additional salt water south to the St. Lucie River, which may indeed be able to mix with the fresh water to create some activity and also back pressure, because the amount of volume that's coming out of the St. Lucie River is greater than that which is coming in from the ocean exchange, from the tidal exchange. So that was presented. Again, it's a hypothesis, and we could do nothing, or we could do something. The difference between the volume of freshwater, nutrient-laden material coming into the lagoon is creating a backup all the way up to Nettles Island and north. But if we were able to change that dynamic, if you were to turn pumps on and turn pumps off in a way of creating additional salinity, maybe there's an opportunity to at least create some mechanism now or in the future to change this dynamic when it comes upon us. You know, every 3 years we're seeing this, so maybe it's time to actually investigate the hypothesis to see if it in fact would be something we could utilize, even if it's on an emergency basis. So the committee person and Dr. DeFries, I forgot her name. She was with the HABS committee. She was a chairwoman of that. I gave her that information and suggested at least investigation of it. So.
Right what you're talking about. When I was a kid, I went surfing. There was a surf spot called Stumps, and we would sit on the beach, and the water coming through from the lagoon into the ocean, you could lay there on the beach and get washed off. I mean, it used to be connected right there where you're talking about.
Interesting. Jim's already gone, so he didn't hear your comments. But an interesting proposal. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. Safe trip. Chuck, you ready? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So briefly,
Chuck Jacoby from?
Chuck Jacoby from the St. Johns River Water Management.
Please, thank you, sir.
Sorry about that. The further north you go, the rockier things seem to get. So Mosquito Lagoon and the Northern IRL still have relatively high chlorophyll levels in the 40s and 50s of micrograms per liter. That still is a bit of a mix of the species that we saw in the super bloom, and the brown tide is still a bit of a player. As you come further down, we're beginning to see the pyridinium blooms, which bring the bioluminescence that people enjoy at night, and that's a little more typical. That's a dinoflagellate. Those are patchier. We're not seeing the large-scale coalesced blooms that we've seen in the past, so that's somewhat good news. Secchi depths, as you come down into the sort of central and lower parts, are sort of over 1 meter, so water clarity is better. Overall, seagrasses are kind of holding their own. We're not seeing a lot of big changes. So again, what we had was seagrasses pretty much extending over somewhat of the footprint that they were mapped at, but the densities had declined. So rather than having 60% cover, you would see maybe 10% cover. So much patchier, little patches of seagrass, but still kind of reaching out to the same sort of depths. Dissolved oxygen levels, again, there's a conjunction of events that are making dissolved oxygen a concern. Water temperature is a key part of that. So the warmer the water, the less oxygen it will hold. If you combine that with an increase in biomass of, say, some of these phytoplankton, that's when you may get your DO dips, particularly if you get cloudy days. And again, that could be in the mix. So we're keeping an eye on that particularly in the northern parts, where the DO levels have dipped down to be about 2, and below 2 is when things start to stress. But once again, the hope is that without a big coalesce bloom like we had back in March, we won't see the massive fish kills. You may see some fish kills as dissolved oxygen levels drop in different places.
We have comments for questions for Dr. Jacoby, please? Yes, sir, please.
This is off the mark a little bit, but when I was in graduate school, one of my graduate pieces of work was in the inlets of southeast Florida, the east coast of Florida, the 16 inlets in it. And in my research of the historical inlets and what it had been, there were a lot of other inlets that naturally occurred from Peck's Lake all the way into Vero Beach. There was an inlet. I actually lived right where the IS Indians used to camp and spearfish, right there along Indian River Drive where it turns into Live Oak. That's where my house used to be. And Millie Bennell schooled me on where the Indian camp was. That was one of the natural inlets that occurred along Florida's east coast. And there were inlets all the way on up into Brevard and Volusia County that are no longer there. And they are sealed off by A1A, the Cape, condos, houses, and things. They just can't blow out anymore like they used to naturally. And I just think somewhere along the line as we progress, we need to look at some way of flushing that northern lagoon in particular and other parts of the lagoon. It's a part of the puzzle. I think it's a fix we got to look at and have the engineers and environmentalists and the researchers look at a way of allowing the lagoon to flush like it used to. It used to historically. That's how it survived. The water would build up in the lagoon and blow out in a low spot along the dune line and would stay open for months. My grandfather-in-law was the first chairman of the first inlet commission of Palm Beach, and he gave me pictures and stories of the lagoon back in that era. And he said that's the way it was. And he hand dug with an ox cart the Palm Beach inlet. And they couldn't keep it open very long, but he said it was one of the naturally occurring areas that occurred all up and down the East Coast. There were a number of low spots, but something we need to, as we progress, something that the science community needs to look at, I think is a piece of the puzzle.
Certainly has validity. Other comments, questions for Dr. Jacoby, please? Thank you for always being available and ready. That's very kind. Do we have comments from board members, please? Doug Daniels, would you like to start?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Gilmore? Yes, sir. No, good?
No report.
Are you sure?
Positive.
Oh, okay.
I'm fine.
Mr. Chairman, although
please.
Although I had asked for the addition of the discussion on ERC.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, that's fine. But I would like us to consider, since we do and we are a science-based entity, is to review and advise the council on the prospects of the changes and how any of those changes might impact the lagoon, anywhere along the lagoon, with whether it be the increase in the benzene or whatever the other changes have been documented and submitted and approved. So I would like at least to have a science review of the information that was created and approved so that we can understand what implications may occur to the lagoon based on that. So I would just ask for support to at least take a look at that, and I think you have that documentation that could be provided to the science committee.
And just a second, because I need to apologize. And I do apologize because we put that on the agenda, but as Dwayne well knows, because he and I both participate in the same club, we're the short memory club, and I apologize for that. So
it's absolutely fine, sir. But I did have one comment to follow up after that.
Well, okay.
So we have, I can get staff to bring that to Dwayne so it can be presented to the lagoon.
Please, maybe the next meeting we might have a agenda
possibly.
item on it?
We have it statewide, and it's so I'll have to see if we can pull it out for the lagoon. I do want to just a point of clarification that the benzene number for the lagoon went down. with the benzene number they adopted that applies to the lagoon got more stringent, it went down, so.
And you're making a differentiation between Lagoon and other parts of the state? That's what?
Yeah, there's about 3% of the water bodies where it was adjusted a little bit upwards, and that was just what the science provided. But for 97% of the waters in the state, the benzene number went down.
It'd be nice to know what the whole picture looks like either way. So.
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir, you had others?
So that, we'll take that off the agenda now. The other was, I am getting anecdotal reports from local fishermen who've been fishing the lagoon around Fort Pierce now for decades, that we are losing our seagrass at an alarming rate that we haven't seen before. And it's largely because of the significant input of the C-25 now continuing to flow. We have, if we're going to be able to save the lagoon and be able to replant or reestablish seagrasses and the fisheries, Fort Pierce is probably, again, the last bastion for that hope. I see some folks from Harbor Branch here, and I don't know if they're doing any studies or taking a look at that, or we're getting some NASA pictures. I think we asked for NASA to give us their satellite pictures when we were in D.C. on the seagrasses, but I'm looking at Doug wanting to say something.
Yeah, to your point, we got the capability of taking every gallon of that water and parking it out west, as you know. And I sent a list to the new executive director of South Florida. Kevin knows this, that we can hold that water, and St. John's with marshes out there, we can move that water north, move it north-south rather than east where it shouldn't be going, and we can take every gallon of that water and hold it for other uses.
Let's take out the turnpike. That'll that's just a joke anyway. But you're right, and we talked about the C-23, C-24 impacts, and St. Lucie has a significant investment, as does the South Florida, and that land is available. And we still put $1 million aside in 2013 to meet the governor's request as a match to get that thing started. So,
we can do this. That's the neat thing about it. We can take it and do this.
I move that we take your signature.
And we'll send this to you, because when we keep talking about ourselves and we're doing it and all this kind of self-incrimination, which is really appropriate, but we don't want to be too hostile since we're accusing ourselves. But we do have some reports available about how effective our sewer systems are. And it's not pleasant, because we frequently experience releases, and that's troubling. So I think Dura made that available to y'all, and if not, we'll make it available so it can go to the various members, because that is another element that we need to be looking at. These are sewer systems. These aren't septic tanks. These are sewer systems where we have thousands of gallons of raw sewage that's going kapoop into our waters. And we need to be aware of that so that we can start figuring out how to address that. Okay, that's at the moment. Yes, sir, you had, please.
Mr. Chairman, I've got one piece of business. As you all know, I've been very supportive and actively communicating with technology companies, and I know Drew at DEP, all the counties have been kind of bombarded with technologies. But in that strategic communication, I'm beginning to run into opportunities where the commercial industrial folks want to say, we'd like to tell you more, but we need to have a non-disclose agreement. And what I'd like to do, if with your authorization, is that as long as these agreements go through our legal counsel, that they are compliant with Florida law, that you give us at staff the ability to execute those when they look like they have appropriate value. I mean, my general position is if you don't need to tell us, it's better that you don't. But I have an opportunity coming up, and in fact several, where a more detailed dialogue would be very useful. And then these happen kind of on the visits, and just want to get your sense, and I actually have one in front of me now, but would like to have that authority at the staff level as long as they're simple NDAs that don't have any complicated issues that meet Carolyn Ansay's legal review, that we could have the ability to execute those. Anything that's different or would obligate us in any way or shape or form liabilities that were not normal, we would bring to you. But just wanted to see how you felt about that.
Yes, and I think this is quite important, and we're not looking for liabilities. We're looking for the permissions for that you might interact with these, and whatever information that you gain would be retained, and that's what I understand that we're doing. It's
correct. There are some partners out there that are interested in working with us, understanding the larger problems of the lagoon. And when you kind of come into these industrial sites, very often to have that discussion, you need to be a little bit exposed to some of their IP. And I don't want to take risk on our end by seeing stuff without having those disclosures. And obviously, they want to be able to trust me when they come in and have that conversation. That and they have to define, so based on the Florida law, that, if they say this is IP, they have to actually, let you know in advance that they are extending information that is confidential. And I don't know if you want to add some additional information, but I do have an opportunity that I prefer not to talk about in detail today. It's coming on pretty quick. That's really exciting, but an NDA would be extremely useful to me in that discussion.
all right, Mr. Davis.
Over time, NDAs have become fairly standard form, and they have a lot of outs in them. They're not unless you're with somebody who is really trying to pull something unusual. They all look basically alike, and they all have a lot of holes in them. For instance, if the information becomes generally known, it no longer applies. If it's information that we had before, it doesn't apply. There's all kinds of outs to these sorts of things, and it might be helpful to maybe send one of the copies to everyone so they can take it and look through it and see how it is. What it's generally designed to do is to just capture the technology that is genuinely proprietary to that particular company. And, what you find is that range of technology, that range of information is usually pretty small and really doesn't, it really doesn't have that much effect.
Thank you, sir. What we're talking about is
Chair.
a non-disclosure. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, if I may.
Please.
Just to be clear, the issue with a public entity entering into a non-disclosure agreement is we are obviously bound by laws that are more protective of sharing information, and particularly the public records law. And so that's where the rub always comes with governments entering into any kind of confidentiality agreement, is on the one hand, we want to remain confidential, but on the other hand, we have a law that compels us to provide information to people should they ask. And so there is one narrow carve-out in the law that does allow us to protect trade secrets. The notion that we in there are cases on this, we can't agree to protect all proprietary information, and that's just not something we can do because of the public records law, but there's a specific statutory exemption that applies to trade secrets. And so what I've proposed, and we've implemented this language in the current document that's before us, is that we're not agreeing to provide some blanket proprietary exemption. We're only agreeing to protect those things that meet the very narrow statutory definition of a trade secret, and we specifically reference the statute and that the documents be marked as such, and that would be the limited nature of the agreement, and therefore the exposure or risk to this organization would be, again, if it is indeed a trade secret and it comes into the organization's hands, we would be compelled to protect it and make sure it doesn't get out. But beyond that, you really can't agree to some blanket proprietary exemption. We've gone through this, and I'm comfortable with the agreement as it stands, and that's what I would suggest to you.
Thank you, Ms. Ansey. We appreciate that. Any other comments? We have clarification, and
That's even more restrictive, and typically they say things like you have to take reasonable measures so that if it gets out, you're not automatically liable. It's just that if you didn't take reasonable measures to protect it.
You know, they are rather loose, and they have to be, because people wouldn't be able to deal with each other otherwise.
All right, are there any other questions, comments about this particular request? I think it has the potential to accelerate the various positive activities that can happen for the benefit of the lagoon. So I'm very supportive. Do we hear a motion that would allow Director DeVries to engage in such as with the document that's approved by legal counsel?
So moved.
Been moved, second. We have a motion and a second. Any further consideration? Is there any public that wish to make comment? Yes, sir, please. You had a comment? I see none. I see no opposition. That's approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Yes, sir, you had other?
I wanted to thank you all. Coming into this meeting, I was hoping that we would have the kind of dialogue we just did. And so I not only thank you, but it's an honor to work with you. That was a thoughtful deliberation with great input from the citizens who were with us. And I think this document is going to be a powerful position as we move forward. So good job.
Frank. Yeah. Frank, in light of folks being hungry, what would you like to?
Nothing.
You're good. Kathy, what would you like to add, please? Ms. Ansey, please, ma'am. I see nothing further. Bob's not here. Yulovic's not here. We would have heard from him.
He sent me. Usually at 7:30 this morning, he sent me a picture of his tire with a big old nail in it.
Oh, okay.
And I said, what, it's going to be an extra 10 minutes you get in here, changing the tire out, and it's one of those new tires where you don't get a spare, and it was.
Oh, yeah.
And so, anyway, I've given a hard time about, him not being able to change the tire. So I'm going to bring a tire iron in for the next meeting.
Our next IRL meeting is August the 12th. And Chris, we're coming down to your place, so we expect donuts at the St. Lucie. Chinese will do. St. Lucie Commission Chambers. It'll be at 9:30, August the 12th, and I hope all of you are able to attend. Thank you for being here. Do we have some other comment? Somebody? No? All right, adjourn. Oh, I'm sorry. Katie, please. Sorry.
Kathleen Albee, Hope Sound. In relation to technologies, I think that you're talking about people, they have their own science and their equipment that they go and suck up algae, correct? Or is that what you were talking about?
We probably talked to like 30 different companies, everything from biomass handling to algae remediation.
So similar to Ecosphere?
Well, some are similar and some are very different.
Okay. I just wanted everyone here to be aware of something that came to my attention over the weekend. I had gone to Rio, to where the nature park is, and discovered some of our Martin County workers having to clean up after a company disposed of their waste product or whatever. Basically, like, they threw the algae back all over the park again, all over the trail, and our county workers had to go and clean that up, risk their help to go and clean that up. And I don't know what the county had to do with it afterwards. I understand that luckily it was very dried up at that point. I don't know the science of it, if it's able to remanifest itself after it gets wet again or anything, but I just want concern to be how they dispose of their waste after they do their project.
That is a very good point. Just as an update, I have been passing the technology questionnaire around through our science community. The STEM AC will look at it in its detail. We actually shared it with DEP staff, and so probably around the September timeframe, you will see that in a final format, and it is a pretty self-regulating document that those companies that would want to come to us and have us at least recognize in some factual way that they exist would have to fill out this form, and it goes through safety issues, permitting issues, compliance, give us data. So it is very much a self-vetting, almost an internal peer review, because we have been inundated. Almost every week I'm getting multiple phone calls from all over the United States with solutions to our problem. I know Deb Drum is dealing with it at the county. I know Drew, your staff is getting a lot. And so this will at least provide everybody a portal to bring information in that is standardized, that's going to ask those really tough questions, that hopefully saves us in staff time, because once some of these salespersons get on the phone, it's really hard. Really hard to get them off. It's, you know, do I have a deal for you and a technology for you? This one MO or NDA that I'm signed is not like that. So in the next meeting, hopefully we're going to bring a real exciting partnership to you that I'm excited about. So, but we do have a problem with lots of technologies, but very little vetting of exactly what they do, how they work. And so we'll work closely with Drew's people. You know, we've talked about it a lot, haven't we? It's just a challenge. A lot of great ideas. It's just hard to know which great ones actually work.
So tune in August the 12th at 9:30 for the next installment.